Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Finance and Personnel Committee's special budget meeting on Monday, October 30th at 3 p.m. All notices have been posted. The roll call will be taken now. Alder Stephen Knott,
Present.
Alder McAllister,
Present.
and myself, Alder Leanne Stokes. Also in attendance today are Alder Diane Wolf,
Present.
Alder Larry Jurassic,
Present.
and Alder Dan Stevens.
Present.
Okay, also I'd like to acknowledge all of the staff that has done such a wonderful job of getting this budget done and ready to go and putting the meeting together and so forth. So I'd like to call out the names of the people that are here. Mary Kim Smith will be here very, very shortly. Rick Niemeyer is here. He is our city administrator. Amanda Jackson's our city attorney. Jared Halter is the director of public works. Kevin Schubert is the city engineer. Katie Aspenson, director of planning and zoning. Dan Wick is director of park and rec. Brian Babish is the facilities manager. Justin Swarthling is the Omni Center manager. Joanne Marcon is our city clerk. Amy Franzen, human resources director. Sabrina Steger, financial services director / treasurer. Karen Marqua, accounting and payroll supervisor. Peter Fleming, is fire chief. Chief Ashbeck is here from the police department. Tim Berg is the assistant police chief, and Lisa Schmidt, planning inspection clerk, and Jennifer Smith O'Brien is the planning associates. Hopefully I did not miss anybody, but we really do appreciate all of the hard work. We probably don't know 1/10 of what you do to get this budget ready to go, so I really appreciate that. Consideration and action on minutes from the previous meeting. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. The minutes have been approved. And public input is item number 3. If anyone in the audience would like to do public input, please come forward at this time and give your name and address and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. This is the first call. Second call. Third and final call. The public input section of the meeting is now closed. Consideration and possible action on the following items. The first item is number 4. The 2024 proposed executive budget, including budgets for the general fund, special revenue funds, debt service funds, enterprise funds, capital project funds, and community development authority funds. Before we actually start into the book, I have just a few administrative things that I'd like to go over. And this is just a broad overview of some of the goals that I thought we would have for this meeting. The goal is to complete the 2024 executive budget this evening, if possible. This budget comes to us as a balanced budget, which is a great place to be starting our review. The staff is here to answer questions the alders may have as we progress through the budget tabs. Alder McAllister, Alder Knott, and Alder Stokes are the voting members of this meeting. However, the entire Common Council participates in all discussions. Alder Wolf, Alder Stevens, and Alder Jurassic may suggest a motion they would like to support, with the hope that one of the community members will make the said motion. The entire council will vote on the 2024 executive budget on November 13th at the budget hearing. With that said, I'd like to ask that any questions that the alderpersons want to ask or any comments or clarifications they seek should be resolved this evening and not at the budget hearing. I would also like to mention that the alderpersons received their budget binders, which again contained a balanced budget. This budget is a city administrator's budget and not the department head's budget. The budget binder contains the city administrator's 2024 operational letter, which was composed by the city attorney, who was our interim city administrator at that time, but it was also reviewed by our current city administrator after his start date in September. There's also a new addition to the budget book, which is called the incentives section. The alders may choose to increase, decrease, or eliminate special line items. The line items found to be satisfactory are to be left alone and accepted as a part of the entire budget. If we could open the budget books now, I would also like to have the city attorney read the letter. That is our operational letter.
Yes, Alder Stokes. All right. Each year, the city faces new and different challenges as it relates to budgeting and the overall goal of managing the needs of various departments, goals of the Common Council, as well as the expectations of our citizens. This year presented an unusual but welcome change after many years of 0% line item increases for departments. And despite a downward trending net new construction, 0.96%, the city was able to at least temporarily address some of our inflationary concerns through the increase in shared revenue provided by the state of Wisconsin. Despite the short-lived victory, our challenge remains that without access to a local sales tax and a long-term move away from tying growth to net new construction, the city will remain unable to make significant progress on infrastructure or expand our workforce to address the myriad of needs in a modern community. Thanks in large part to the increase in shared revenue of $458,978.98, the city was able to go into budget without facing a deficit, a phenomenon we have not seen in several years. In an effort to spark creativity while being fiscally responsible, department heads were invited to submit initiatives on behalf of their department for funding. These could be anything from line item increases to special projects or staffing that they wanted to add in 2024. A complete spreadsheet of the initiatives submitted is attached to this memo. These initiatives were reviewed by City Attorney Amanda Jackson, Finance Director Sabrina Stiegard, and upon his arrival, City Administrator Rick Niemeyer. Through the increase in shared revenue, we were able to fund the following initiatives in the proposed 2024 operational budget. Under the clerk department, we increased poll worker wages. In the fire department, we increased overtime funding and the training budget. In HR, we funded professional speaker for the 2024 all-staff training. In the Parks Department, we funded a second full-time parks laborer. In the IT department, we increased their maintenance budget. In the Omni Center, we increased their marketing budget. In the Police Department, we increased their software maintenance to address Axon storage issues and added a second part-time record specialist at 16 hours per week. In the Public Works Department, we increased training, streets operational budget, and the streets equipment budget. While historically, the city's ability to add full-time positions has been nearly impossible as a result of the additional shared revenue funding, we are proposing to add a regular full-time year-round parks laborer position, which will alleviate some of the staffing concerns in that department. This position will provide relief to our Parks Department, which took the brunt of the layoffs that were necessary for a balanced budget in 2021. Additionally, due to the continued backlog and increased volume of open record requests received by our police department, a second regular part-time law enforcement record specialist is being proposed for 16 hours a week. As you can see by the below graph, personnel is the city's largest expense. The city's personnel are the backbone of this organization, yet the city remains unable to keep up with the market and the rising inflation costs. At its peak, inflation hit 8.06% this year, while the city only provided non-represented employees with a 2.5% COLA in 2023. The city is proposing a split COLA with a 2% increase on 1/1 and a 2% increase on 7/1 for a total increase over the year of 4% for our non-represented employees. Our fire union agreement includes a 1.5% increase on 1/1, a 1.5% increase on 7/1 for a 3% increase over the year. Our police union agreements include a 1.5% increase on 1/1 and a 1.5% increase on 7/1 for a 3% increase over the year. Unfortunately, this means that we are significantly behind inflation in all of our wages. It will be especially important as we move forward that as an employer, we are considering the rising cost of living and adjusting wages and benefits to remain a competitive employer. We'd like to especially thank Finance Director Sabrina Steger for her many hours of work on this budget. Rebecca Thompson, who helped us make the budget beautiful, as well as our department heads, supervisors, and staff for taking the time to thoroughly submit initiatives and who in turn helped make the 2024 operational budget a reality. It is with good people that we are able to make great things happen. Respectfully submitted, Amanda Jackson, City Attorney, and Rick Niemeyer, City Administrator.
Thank you, Amanda. The next, I'd like to proceed by asking our Finance Services Director if there are any changes or updates to the aforementioned budget since we received it at Common Council meeting on October 10th.
Thank you, Alder Stokes. At your seats tonight, I do have 7 proposed changes. I did look back to 2023's budget meeting. We also had 7, so I don't know, maybe 7's my lucky number, I'm not sure. But proposed in front of you, the first change is to increase the July COLA to 3%. This change was brought forth through discussions. Again, kind of looking at the memo, that's what was brought forth and what I was asked to prepare. So what you can see is the first change, what it would affect each department. I can tell you in total for the general fund, it would affect the general fund by about $10,759. In total, between all funds, it's about a change of $20,000. I don't know if you want me to go through each. Do you want me to go through each one? Or do you want to have discussion after each one? I'm not sure what the will of the committee is.
I think we can go through each
Keep going through.
of them. and then-
Okay, perfect. So the next change that's listed, this is pretty normal every year. I do my best guess before open enrollment. These changes are related to receiving the full open enrollment changes. So you can see in the general fund, there's a few areas where I over budgeted and a couple areas that were under budgeted. What this means in total for the general fund, I was able to add $21,969 back to the equipment replacement fund. Essentially, what I'm doing is putting some additional levy into that equipment replacement fund that we use when we're working on the CIP budget, and really any type of equipment costs that come throughout the year, we're able to use that fund. Then you can see for water, I was able to decrease the amount of health insurance that we're budgeting in there. Sewer, I was slightly low, so there's an increase in insurances. And then the other 3, I had just over budgeted in those areas based on getting the final open enrollment numbers. The third change, this one came shortly after the budget was prepared and in your hands. We did have a couple of retirements in the Public Works Department. So we took those retirements and we kind of budgeted for a lower salary rate since those individuals had been here with the city for a long period of time. We weren't going to hire someone who would be at the top of the pay scale. So that is what the change in number 3 is. What I'm doing there is decreasing the wage amount that's in the street department. Then essentially I added that additional dollars to the equipment replacement fund to continue again to help fund the equipment replacement fund. Change number 4, when evaluating the TIF. I took the full value of the TIF and calculated the taxes based on the TIF, but really TIF 6 had a beginning value or a base value, so I had to decrease that out. This doesn't affect the general fund. It doesn't really affect anything other than the TIF budget. So that's what change number 4 is. Change number 5, at F&P, it was approved at F&P and the Common Council. Actually, I think it went straight to Common Council to kind of change the structure for the Parks and Recs department. So there are now be 2 recreation coordinators. Since that change did get approved, you can see the effect of that on the budget. Essentially, what I'm doing is increasing salaries, FICA retirement for the recreation coordinator position, and then I'm decreasing that additional dollars I was going to give to the equipment replacement fund. Then in change number 6, through review of the budget, there was a formula error on one of the spreadsheets for wages for the Common Council. So I am increasing salary as regular and decreasing that dollar I would give to the equipment replacement fund by $1,247. And essentially that accounts for the additional amount that we give our council president. And then item number 7, through review of the budget, there is a request in the IT budget that we would change our printing for the city, where we would purchase new printers and go through a new service provider. So with that cost, there was a printer cost that was left in to purchase a printer for the police department. Assuming everything goes through with the IT purchase, we wouldn't need these additional dollars. So that is what item number 7 is.
Okay, because this is my first time doing this, I do have a question. Do we need to have a motion on the floor before we can start discussion on this? Okay. I make a motion to accept the changes just outlined by our finance director, Sabrina Stevens, for the 2024 proposed executive budget.
I'll second.
I will second. And I also have a follow-up question and discussion.
All right, any discussion? Stephen, would you like to start?
Yes, I think I know the answer to this already. I just want to confirm all 7 of these items, if approved, would still leave us with a balanced budget as is right now, right?
That is correct, Stephen. We would still be
Okay.
at a balanced budget.
Okay, thank you. I thought so.
Nothing? Alder Stevens?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So under the changes in with the increase of the COLA to 3%, I was actually glad to see that moved up. And some of my concerns was for those of us that have been around for a little while, I remember we did that last wage study, and that was painful because everybody gets upset, and we'd like to avoid that if possible. And then we immediately had to go into some very tight budget years. And I know that we fell behind right out of the gate and pretty much defeated the whole purpose of the wage study. So, is 3% the absolute cap, or do we have any flexibility to be in excess of 3%? Because I mean, we have years where, was it last year? It was inflation was like 8% and they got like 1. As much as we can try to rectify this, I think we should consider that. I know that we've had some departures from the city where we lost some talented people, and a lot of it was because there were greener pastures elsewhere. And I, as one council representative, would prefer that we do not settle for mediocrity. I'd like to keep the best people here and on Alaska where they belong. So if there's a way, and maybe I get a feeling that the balance, if the budget is balanced, that might not be the case, but if we could be more generous on the COLA, I think that would at least warrant some discussion because we have a ways to catch up.
I'll let Amanda go first, but then I'd like to make a comment to Chair.
Well, let Sabrina correct me. But I believe it would be if we increase that 3% to 4% in July, it would be about another 20,000. Which would be taken from the equipment replacement fund. So as she noted, we were putting an extra about 21,969 back to equipment replacement with the healthcare changes that could in theory be used to fund an additional percent.
That is correct. My whole reasoning for putting dollars to the equipment replacement fund, my predecessor was able to do that several years, at least 5 years that I looked back. He was able to put some dollars into the equipment replacement fund of levy dollars. My time here, the first 2 years, I wasn't able to do that. Essentially, by putting money in the equipment replacement fund, it gets us to a place where I kind of start out ahead for next year because I have those additional dollars that are sitting there that I can use towards COLAs and healthcare increases and things of that nature. But if that was what was proposed, I would do what Amanda said and not put quite as much into equipment replacement, if that is what is proposed.
And then actually a follow-up question from, I don't know if anybody can tell me, from the point of the last wage study, how far behind have we fallen on wages? And I just previous budgets, I mean, we can only do what we can do. And this year seems like it's a little bit different. And how much of that problem could we fix?
I don't know that any of us here can answer that without doing a full wage study, but we are still behind. And so anything that could be added to wages would just put us one step closer to being closer, essentially.
Alder Wolf.
Thank you, Chair. And correct me if I'm wrong, but after the wage study and we did our correct, it wasn't 100% correct. It was, we moved as much as we could with what we had, with a thought that we had hoped that we would be able to keep moving, but we did not. So we never did move all the way with that. Thank you.
Alder Jurassic.
Yeah, the question I have is, are we still doing the 2% for January and then 3% for July?
Yeah, great question. So the proposed budget that's sitting in front of you in the book is a 2-2. It was brought forward to increase that to a 2 in January and then a 3 in July. So then Alder Stevens is saying, what if we made that 4 in July is what I'm gathering, correct?
With 3 down and 3 that.
Yeah.
I didn't have a particular, I'm just looking, is there, I was not suggesting a particular percentage. It was more of a what, if anything, is available and how much of our previous year discrepancies or shortages could we rectify? So, I mean, maybe it's 0.5%, maybe it's 1/4, maybe it's not an option at all.
I guess I would ask if we, Sabrina, if we do, accept the 2 in January and the 3 in July now, is that locking in any changes where we can't do that? Or do we need to take that off?
Still the budget hearing, wasn't it?
To say, I think you can still make the changes later, and Amanda can correct me if I'm wrong, because these are proposals that will then go on the Common Council, which can still be subject to change at that point, or potentially even later on in the today.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to clarify.
I don't know that you'd want to change it after the budget hearing, because then we would need to have a new public hearing. So I think you could make the change tonight. Yeah, then it would be a budget amendment. So if you want to do a pre-approval, it would either be at tonight or at the public hearing.
But we would still have the chance at the public hearing.
Yes.
to do- Okay.
Madam Chair, can I speak?
Yes, Stephen, go ahead.
Thank you. I think that there's a certain amount of deferral that I personally have with Sabrina for her reasoning behind increasing the equipment replacement fund. I would be leery about going above 3.5, which would still allow her to put approximately 10.9, I think, or 11.9 into the equipment replacement fund, if I'm following the math right.
Is that a motion, Stephen?
No, I'm here. I would like to hear from Sabrina. I'm sorry, I should have been clear. So if we went to 3.5, that would still allow her to put 11.9 and change into the equipment replacement fund, correct?
Stephen, we actually right now, before these budget changes that would get approved or not approved, we were able to put 107,000 into equipment replacement.
Okay, so this 21,969 is on top of that.
That is correct.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah, I personally have no concerns about going to a 4 myself. I mean, what do others think?
What is the council?
Okay. Oh, okay, based on what you just said, okay.
Megan?
I have a question.
Right, Meg.
Sabrina, if this change that's under discussion right now was increased the July COLA to 4%, do you anticipate the ramifications for then the 2025 budget? Because we have to think ahead, with the split, that it's going to be kind of a compounded effect on the following year. And so this year, we're good, but looking ahead to the next year, 2025, would we still theoretically be okay? Because we do have a lot of things that we're not sure how they're going to shake out with shared revenue.
I would feel confident moving forward into 2025, only because I was able to put some dollars into equipment replacement. The dollars I was able to put away would give me enough to fund the COLA at the beginning of the year that we would be putting into effect in July.
Any further discussions? Okay,
I'll make a motion that we increase the July COLA to 4%.
Okay, so that would be an amendment, Stephen, correct?
Okay, well, it's still a motion, but yes. We've already passed the previous one, or we approved the 1 through 7, didn't we?
No.
Oh, we did not. Yes, so yes, it would be, I'll make an amendment. I propose an amendment to increase to 4% in the July.
Okay, so then we would need to vote on the amendment first, and that
We
amendment,
need a second.
second, I'm sorry. Is there a second?
I guess I'll second that.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, closer. Sorry.
Okay, so we have an amendment to the original motion that the COLA changes will be 2% in January and 4% in July. Any further discussions? Alder Stevens?
So for this discussion point, it's just procedural. While I generally think this is a good idea, I want to be careful that we don't kind of take all the free resources and tie it up right away. And I just kind of wonder how we're going to go through the budget section, and if there's other areas that need to be addressed. I don't want us to paint ourselves in a corner. I mean, maybe I was thinking that we would just kind of establish what our potential priorities were, and then we may have to ebb and flow. So if we approve this to 4%, and then something happens later on tonight and we need to find the funds for it, I mean, would we potentially have to go back and change it to 3.5? Or are we locked in? So I guess I'm kind of looking for, as we're making changes throughout, if we just increase here, increase there, are we giving ourselves less options for things in the back of the book that might also be important. So I'm just kind of curious as to what the plan is for how we will proceed through the evening. I'm supportive of this, but there's a lot of other things that need consideration.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I guess just to answer that, I mean, that is kind of the process tonight. So anytime you want to make a change, you're going to have to find the money somewhere, whether it's from the 107,000 or the 21,000 or another budget. Any proposed changes there, with a balanced budget will need to have a funding source from somewhere else within the budget.
Okay, the one thing that I'm wondering if we can not make this decision now then, and having Sabrina take care of all of the pluses and minuses as we go through on her spreadsheets. I'm wondering what the F&P members that can vote feel.
And maybe,
Stephen?
and I apologize, maybe we should get, there's a pending motion. So do they need to resolve that prior to moving on to the next item, or how would that logistically work?
Correct. So we do have to vote on the amendment
We have to,
or withdraw the motions,
Make a motion to table it for later tonight.
or just to withdraw.
Well, I mean, I can withdraw it, I guess, but if we got the funds and we think it's not going to be an issue next year, which is what I heard too, I don't know. I mean, I'm still kind of leaning towards a yes vote on this.
Just a suggestion, my thought would be is either to vote on the motion, the amendment to the motion now, or you can, instead of tabling it, I would postpone it until after further discussion, but yet later tonight, because you can always pick it up off the, if it's been postponed to a specific time, you can pick it back up, whereas tabling, I think that essentially disposes of it, if I understand correctly.
Well, I can just withdraw the amendment if that's what you want. I mean, that's the easiest way to do that. So what are the other council members' view? And again, not just the committee, but the council members. I'm willing to go along either way. So.
My suggestion is either pass the amendment and the motion as proposed, which is one choice. Or if you're not quite comfortable with that, withdraw the amendment so that you can at least pass the motion on the floor for the budget changes so that we have a concrete place that we're at one way or the other. Because who knows, 3 hours from now, we know what's going to be going on. So I just think we should do one of those two things to get to a concrete place and then address it as needed as we go on. Because even if you pass the amendment and you pass the motion and for some reason later on, you can still change your mind. It's just a motion away.
so Stephen, you were willing to withdraw the amendment?
I'll withdraw my amendment motion.
Okay.
Yep, and I'll withdraw my second.
Okay. Then I think we should, what was the terminology?
I think if we can just kind of establish that that's a budget priority,
Okay,
and then we'll go back when we know what the whole pie looks like.
okay,
You can still pass the.
Yeah.
this.
okay.
So now you should vote on the original motion now, which
Okay.
is to approve the budget.
Okay, so then the original motion was that we approve the. Just a second here. We
7
approve
changes.
the changes from the financial service directors Sabrina Stever for the 2024 proposed executive budget. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Voting, isn't it? I was expecting more eyes. I was like, what is going on here?
Okay, so
Sorry.
we
Yeah,
have now
that was-
passed that and accepted the changes.
We're looking for something more.
Okay, and going back to the initiatives, we haven't gone through those yet. Sabrina, were you going to be going through the initiatives?
Those were really just in there for reference.
Okay, then we don't need to do that. Okay, we can go to the first tab, which is the assessment information. Just as a note, I'd like to just mention that I really like the idea of having something in the front that actually shows what the description is within that section. I think that that was a very good idea. Sabrina, would you like to start?
Sure. So in this section really is just the Department of Revenue apportionment report for the city of Onalaska. Don't really, and then a ratio analysis. This is just what our assessor prepares on a yearly basis. You guys approve at Board of Review for our values for homes. So don't really have anything else to add here.
The one question that I would have is last year, there was a personal property number that was being decreased because of the year prior to that. Has
Yep.
that been resolved?
That has been resolved, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Steven,
Nope, no questions.
Sean?
Nope, I'm good.
Any other council members have questions? Okay, then we'll go on to the next tab, which is the wage information. Are there any questions at all? Alder Stevens?
I noticed that we had a vacancy in the firefighting department. Is that going to be filled before we go into the next budget year?
In which department? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. In fire? Yes, so yes, I think they actually have a person in place or close. Chief Letty's, saying he thinks it is. So yes, that will be taken care of
Before the end of the year, yeah.
before the end of this year, yes.
Not a question, but I have a comment.
Yes, Stephen?
Okay. Just want to make sure everyone's clear that the second half salaries are based off the 2%, not the 3 that we passed.
Yes, that's correct. And if the 3 or the 4 would get approved, I would change the tables and I could email those out to you as well.
Any further questions or concerns?
Mm-mm.
Okay, let's go on to the budget summary. Do you have any opening remarks, Sabrina?
The only remark that I do have is on page 3 in that section. I did have a typo at the top of the page. It says November 12th is the budget hearing. I did fix that before it got posted in the paper over the weekend. So that has been updated to the 13th and the 14th. And then also on page 1, there was a formula error on the sick leave payout. For some reason, the formula didn't just come down there and it was just at 0. It should be 112.48%.
Tracking the first one. Where's the second one?
Sick leave payout.
The
You're saying
sick
on the
leave
very,
sick leave
very first
payout?
page?
Nope, page 3, Stephen, of that section, the sick leave payout, the percentage change was incorrect. It should be 112.48%. We did increase the sick leave payout for 2024 proposed.
Okay. Thank you. I'm tracking now. Thanks.
Yep.
Any questions of the committee or of the council?
It was a pretty big increase in the sick leave payout. Is that,
Yeah,
I mean, more than doubled. So what happened there?
so we are getting to a point where we do have several people who are reaching retirement age. Amy could answer that number better than me. But we know of some retirements that are going to happen in 2024, some of which are individuals who have been here for a long period of time, who have rather large sick leave balances, and our policy is that we do pay those out upon retirement. If you retire from the city and you're WRS eligible, then we do pay those out. So due to several people being on that list, I do, try to account for that within wages, and usually there's, the new person that comes in is going to make a little bit less than the person who's been here for 20 years. But just to help cover us for that cost, I wanted to increase that payout line.
And then a follow-up question, this might be actually for Joanne. The elections had a big increase. Was that because we're anticipating a larger quantity of elections? Or was that the proposed wage increase, or was that both more elections and more wages?
Correct to both.
Yeah.
And if you want, I can go into that more when we get to the elections tab. But you are correct on both of those things, Dan.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Are we still reviewing or are we ready to go?
Keep her moving.
Okay. Everyone fine? Okay, the next tab is revenues.
I don't know if you want me to talk about this. So in this section is the general fund revenues. The fee schedule was approved at A&J in November, October for sure. It's not November yet. So these are based on discussions with departments, mainly Katie's department that provides the majority of the revenues in the general fund, and then also talking with Dan in regards to Park and Rec and our swimming pool. These are our best guess. I am also very conservative when I budget for revenues. The biggest change this year, you see state aid increase due to the additional shared revenue. Also, you can see our interest revenue. I did increase that pretty substantially to 250,000. Other than that, I'll take any questions that you have, but those are kind of the biggest changes.
Are there any questions at all?
Operator licenses going a large reduction.
Sorry, which line did you say?
Operator licenses,
Operator.
44.
I could take that one. Sabrina.
Can I make a request that when we're talking lines, that we actually use the line number?
44,120. The very bottom line.
Thank you.
Okay, the change in operator licenses is due to an anticipated change in the law that the state will begin issuing operator licenses that can be used statewide. Right now, if you're a bartender, which is what an operator license is, you get that from your local municipality. But once you're able to obtain this license through the state, we anticipate that most people will take advantage of that opportunity, because then it could be used in multiple municipalities. You could bartend in several different municipalities with one license rather than having to obtain one from each different municipality. So we're expecting that our revenue will go down when that becomes available.
Is that number we can look forward to the future be lower?
I'm sorry, what was that, Larry?
Is that number then what we look forward to in the future?
That is the number that we're bracing for in the future. Basically, we took last year's revenue and cut it in half.
Yeah.
Last year's anticipated, what we budgeted for last year in revenue was 5,500, and we cut that in half. It's hard to anticipate. The law actually hasn't even passed yet, but we understand that it's in the works. So we're just being prepared for being conservative in what we might get in operator licenses.
Stephen, any further questions?
None.
Everyone else ready to go? Okay, then we'll go on to the next tab, which is Common Council.
Motley Crew.
I have a question. What subscriptions and dues under line 320 are we going to need to increase by just under $500?
Diane?
Thank you, Chair. Stephen, I can answer that. That is the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. When our finance director and I met as your council president a few months ago, she did give me the common council budget and we reviewed this line by line. And there were some items that we adjusted. I believe, Sabrina, correct me if I'm wrong, office supplies was at 600 and we reduced it by half to 300. Postage was also higher. We reduced it to 50. And subscription and dues, we were not keeping up. And I think we were over budget this past year and you wanted to go ahead and set a realistic figure what we were actually using. So that's where the $8,040 came from, correct?
Yeah, that is our membership to the League of Municipalities. So
Great,
that's
thank you. Does
what
that
they
answer
gave
your
us.
question, Stephen?
Yeah, very adequately. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Alder Stevens?
We do have some other things that appears that over the past several budget years, we're not really using quite as much. Like transcription, it seems like we always budget significantly higher. And legal notices, I guess it's kind of dicey. I mean, we could have a year where they do a lot of ordinance changes or something like that, and that's, but we've been running at about a third to a half of that budget. It just strikes me that if we have, and like postage, I mean, year to date, we're at $8.46. It's only $100 budget, but my point is that I don't know that I would recommend making changes. I would just mark this as if we did have to find some money, a few $1,000s here and there. I mean, we've got some room that we could make some adjustments later.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, the next tab is Police, Fire and Commission, excuse me, Police and Fire Commission. Any questions on that?
Not for me.
Everyone ready to go on? Okay, great. The next tab is the Municipal Court General Fund.
I think it's city attorney then.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't have anything in that tab, but it's not a big budget, I know, that we can do anything with.
On the municipal court, I have $312 on mine.
I'm good with just going with that. I
Okay.
mean, like,
Sounds great. All right, I'm sorry. Then the next tab is the city attorney.
Absolutely.
cut.
Oops.
I just had one minor question on the under seminars, conferences and travel, there's a $500 miscellaneous. Do you have an idea what that would be?
Oh, that is just random conferences that come up through the year. And so there's always different things. This last year I sent Rebecca to an open records training. It sort of just varies every year. Sometimes I will do an OWI prosecutors conference.
Okay. The other question that I have under operating supplies and expenses, and it's just a clarification. The last one is CANVA.
That is what we use all of our marketing for social media. It's a online program that gives us basically free access to images that we do not need to worry about copyright violations and things like that. So if you looked at our Facebook page recently, anything you've seen on there, we make through Canva.
Those are the questions I had. Larry?
On the You can see this throughout the whole book. So for the rest of the book is phone, internet and cable. Now, does that come in as one huge bill and then it's divided to the different divisions by what? How many people are in that unit? Or, I mean, you don't charge every time you're on the internet. How
Yeah,
does it come up?
so there is, when we receive a bill, we do have an allocation, so we allocate to each department. The phone, so that is, there are department heads and some second in commands who have, cell phones for the city, so that would be where the phone piece comes in. Internet and cable would be if a department had cable. There's not many that do. And then the internet, again, just kind of based on if we have like tablets where we need to have service to them that aren't covered.
If they
Then,
have individual tablets, that's where the bill.
yeah, it would go in there. Like, those are just some of the things that would go in there. I don't know, Joe, if you want to add anything. Okay.
So basically, the internet is something that's a shared service by everybody here, so that's why it's broken down to each department. Individual departments are responsible for their cellular devices, so, yeah.
And Karen is here and she says that internet we charge fully to City Hall. So the internet bill would go fully to the City Hall budget, but then any phone costs, things like that would be broken out to the departments.
But it's, that's what I'm wondering with this department, and then if you go to finance, it's $1,000.40. How, what makes that determination? Because you're only a smaller unit than.
I actually would have a bigger department, so I have two people who would have a phone in my department where Amanda would have one. So, yeah, no, no, so that would be why, yeah, that's mainly the.
May I speak?
Yes, Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess to address Larry's question, ultimately, the total cost is going to be the same no matter where you move the funds underneath the budget, if I'm understanding this right. Somebody's got to pay for it. They're just doing it basically based on population, but the final dollars have to be the final dollars.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Any further questions? Okay, the next tab is the city administrator tab. The one question I had for Rick was under operating supplies, the employee engagement and the miscellaneous, could we get an explanation of what that actually is?
Sure. My understanding of that particular item is that historically there have been times when maybe there's been a special event for staff. Maybe they bring in some food or bring in some kind of other item for the event. My understanding is that that's part of what that is used for. And then any other operating supplies that may not be covered by any of the other line items as well. That's been my understanding as to what historically that's used for.
So it would be events like what is coming up for Halloween?
Correct. Yep.
that-
Ordering pizza for the staff and they can come in and then there's a goodie bag, so to speak, for them as well too. So things like that. I believe that is what it's been used for in the past.
Okay. Okay, that's my question. Does anyone else have a question? Stephen?
No, I do not.
Actually, I want to point out and make sure I'm understanding correctly. And this would go back to the previous tab with the attorney, but the amounts under some of the salaries look like they're lower than what we normally would have those positions compensated at. Those are because of splits between different, like, you know, like sometimes you're Public Works and Water Sewer. Okay.
Correct.
Just want to make sure we're treating you fairly.
Okay. Oh, the next tab is the mayor. I did have a question. I had actually read through the minutes for last year's meeting. And there was something on there that I believe that the city attorney had said that this was our last year of the pledge for the La Crosse Chamber Talent Attraction Committee, campaign. And I do see $750 for this year, and I'm wondering if we could get a clarification on that.
We did make our final payment to that. For if what you're referring to is the La Crosse Chamber Talent Attraction Campaign.
Mhm. It's under the page 1, under the line item description and justification.
So there would be a nominal amount if, again, somebody wanted to move some money at some point.
So even though we are not, are we still are we still pledging for that?
No.
Is that's why it's on there?
That can be used for something else. It can be reallocated.
It is still in the budget though, yes.
Okay. Alder Stevens?
I hope this isn't a trend for the whole night, but here's under item like 320 subscription and dues. It's like $300 every year and we're budgeting $1,700. Why don't we lower that to $300 and that frees up $1,400? Kim's used 2 cents in paper for the year. Like and the highest ever was 1634. Like, why don't we reduce these and like $10 and a $300 budget on 320? I just think as we go through, if we're looking at maybe increasing the COLAs or doing something like that, it's easier if we take some of the excess out.
Yes, Mayor?
Okay, I would ask that if anything, you not remove it, but maybe move it to seminars, conference and travel. I have traveled quite a bit this year but fortunately, most of the places I've been able to carpool with staff. And recently, when I went to the League of Municipalities conference, I had my conference fees waived because I was a speaker. And so the only cost to the city of my going there was for my $90 hotel room. So I was able to show that as a way to save money, I guess, but I wouldn't want to have that removed in case there was a conference or something that I needed to go to that would be multiple nights. It wouldn't take that long for it to add up. Or if I wasn't able to carpool with staff and some other things. So just ask that you not completely remove that from the budget. If you want to reallocate it to a different line, I don't have a problem with that.
I'd make that motion for you, but I am not able to make motions.
I'll do that for you, Dan. I was looking at that too, if you hadn't brought it up. So, and thank you, Mayor, for explaining that. So I'll make a motion that we change line 320 subscription and dues under the mayor budget and reduce that from 1,700 to 300 and increase seminars, conference and travel line number 330 from 600 to 2,000. That's a net zero difference overall.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Amanda?
I just wanted to address Alder Stevens' comment. And so when we do the budget, from a philosophical standpoint, we did try to go through as departments and sort of make any major changes. However, we don't get this sort of down to the dollar for multiple reasons. One is inflation is hard to predict, and so we don't necessarily always know what our costs will be. So, obviously with subscription and dues, they don't necessarily change much, but as you look at maybe there's excess in postage or maybe there's a little excess in operating, we don't necessarily know what our costs will be in any given year. And also Sabrina likes to not have a deficit at the end of the year. And if we get too close to the dollar amount, we run the risk of not ending the year in the positive. And so that is one of the reasons that we do leave a little bit of room in some of these and we don't go quite to, we don't look at exactly what last year was and take it exactly to that, if that makes sense.
I agree with Amanda on that. I think that that's what we should be doing. Alder Wolf?
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I would also caution the race to the bottom. It can be very dangerous and when we have to go ahead in February, March, when we go ahead and I forget the phrase, Sabrina, when we go ahead and do the transfers to even everything out to rebalance, we need those dollars here and there or whatever, because it all adds up. And secondly, regarding the mayor's seminars, conference and travel, she has also been gracious the last year or two when council has been invited to attend a few items, she has also opened up her budget to also help pay for that. So and thank you again. So I would I would want our mayor to be able to have that ability to go places and represent the city of Onalaska. Thank you.
Any further discussion? So we have a motion to make the changes to the subscription and dues and to the seminars and conferences. All those in favor of those changes, please say aye.
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 All those against, and I would be against that. But the ayes do have it, so that motion passes. The next tab is finance. Would you like to start with that one, or is?
Yeah, if there's any questions, I didn't really increase much in my budget, but if there are any questions, I will gladly take them.
Line is 2,000.
What'd you say?
Almost every line is 2,000.
Yeah. I like round numbers.
The one thing that I did notice is that there were probably 4 or 5 different tabs that were standalone tabs in the past, and now they are part of and like in Sabrina's case, the audit is now under hers, and there are we'll see that as we're going through that some of the tabs are inside other areas, not standalone.
Yes, thanks for making that point, Alder Stokes. So included in mine is the audit, and then I really take care of budgeting for all of the insurances, as well as sick leave payout, workers' comp, unemployment, et cetera. So you'll see that in my budget as well. I do have lots of discussions, had lots of discussions with our then interim administrator, Jackson, and then with our new administrator about like the sick leave payouts and unemployment and so forth.
There is one thing under the general government line item descriptions and justification that I was wondering if you could clarify. It's 100-51946. It's self-insured retention reserve for $4,000. I was wondering if you could just enlighten us on that.
Yeah, so for our insurance purposes, we do have to have that self-retention. So we do budget for that $4,000 every year. You can see there has been activity in the past. Essentially, if we have an insurance case where it might be like an employment matter or what it may be, we will use that account to record those expenses.
Okay.
Our insurance requires that we have this, SIR, or self-employment retention.
Stephen, do you have any questions at all?
No, I don't see any real radical moves on this at all, so it looks in line to me.
Any other questions of the alders? Okay, we'll move on to the city clerk tab. Are there any
I have
questions?
no questions.
Yes, Stephen.
Oh, I said I have no questions.
Oh, you have no questions? I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm
I'm sorry,
Thank you,
Diane.
Chair. I just wanted note for the record, under the initiatives that our city clerk did put in for additional dollars for our poll workers this year, and that is very much appreciated. Having been a poll worker, it's a long day and I just did half days. It's grueling. It's easy. It's fairly easy work, but you're dealing with the public and it's really long days, and appreciate you thinking of the poll workers. I appreciate that. Thank you.
No other questions? Okay, and the next tab is the elections. I just was wondering under the line item 100-51440. The postage is $11,000. I would assume that has a lot to do with the elections that we're going to be having, that are major elections.
Correct. Yep. In 2024, we will have 4 elections compared to last year. We only had 2, with 2 of them being larger elections, the presidential preference in April and then the presidential in November. So we're expecting a lot of absentee voting. That's where the bulk of the postage comes from. For reference, in 2020, our postage for absentee voting was 18,000. That's when absentee voting was at the highest. So it has gone down since then. So I'm projecting that 11,000 should adequately cover what we need for this next election cycle.
Okay. Yes, Sabrina.
The other thing to note too is the cost of postage has gone up as well. So, and those packets are kind of expensive to mail out. So.
Any other questions at all? Okay, and the next tab is human resources.
I have no questions.
Alder Wolf.
Thank you, Chair. I do see in the initiatives that it was asked for, but was not filled. Hire an HR intern, office assistant, requested was 10 hours a week. If we could ask Human Resources Director Amy Franson to come up and talk a little bit about her department and the challenges that she's currently dealing with. Or I'm sorry, I'm so used to asking. Yeah, you can say there, sorry.
Yeah, so recruitment and retention, obviously, this is a factor for many organizations. We are not alone in this. Looking back at last year, I believe we filled, I think, 10 positions for the year. This year, we are at 20 in October. So again, we've got a few more to go. So we've more than doubled our new hires that we brought into the organization. We're seeing more and more turnover and challenges associated with recruitment and retention as we continue to, again, face the same challenges that all organizations are facing. It does put an extra burden on our office.
If I could also have input from our city administrator.
Certainly. I do know that in the short time that I've been here, I've had conversations with Amy in regards to the work that they have to do and the ability they have to do it with the staff that they have. And I know in particular, recruitment has been a struggle, as Amy has indicated, it's been significantly higher. And so utilizing some additional staff to help with that would be useful. I've met with other departments as well too regarding recruitment and they would welcome it, I believe, as well. I just think it would be helpful for them to have that extra part-time staff person in order to move things along.
Thank you. Thank you both. I passed out, this is a double-sided document. I'm sorry, I don't have copies for everyone. I passed out two different scenarios that I have spoken with our city administrator and also HR director. My concern with the initiative not being satisfied is the stress and the amount of work that's coming through that office. And I feel strongly a small amount of dollars could make a beginning of a difference for 2024. It certainly won't solve all the problems, but I think it will certainly start to, chip away a little bit. I would ask that this F&P committee today, consider my proposal of increasing, and I apologize, Sabrina, I have not talked with you about this because this was just this afternoon, so bear in mind. I would propose increasing in the general fund revenues, the account 100-00000-48100 interest income by the amount of $20,000. And including like amount to be put forth in a part-time position for human resources. And what I would also ask this committee to consider is rather than approve a set 10 hours a week at $12 an hour, or $15 or 15 hours a week for $12 an hour, for example. We found out a couple of years ago when it came to parks that with the ever-changing market conditions, sometimes when you go to post, you don't know what you're going to get in candidates. I think we went through that with lifeguards. So this council at budget time made we approved the then administrator and our Parks and Rec director, Wick, to go ahead and make adjustments. And it's a good thing that we did that year because that's when wages were going up, and we were competing with lacrosse and everyone else. And it turned out to be a very workable situation because council said, we gave them the latitude instead of having to keep coming back to council because they kept getting shut doors because no one would work for the set wages. So I would propose that we just do a set $20,000 for the entire year, 2024. It'll give administration the flexibility to possibly offer more per hour, maybe fewer hours for the right candidate. You don't know who's sitting at home. Maybe they would want to work 10 hours, maybe 15 hours, maybe 20 hours a week. We don't know. With that set 20,000, it'll give administration the ability to flex with the market conditions without having to come back to council for approval and miss valuable hiring time. That would be my proposal. And if for any reason that does not gain any traction here this afternoon, I will be proposing it at the budget hearing in November. Thank you.
Yes, Rick?
If I could just add also as well, it's my understanding too, when Human Resources was down a staff member, some job duties and responsibilities were transferred over to the finance department. Because of the amount of work that there is. And I know now that staff is back up, they have both positions are filled. I don't know if they're even ready yet to even transition those job duties and responsibilities back yet. So this could also help alleviate some of that. So going forward, some of those duties and responsibilities could be transferred back over. How that would look, of course, we would have to see, but that could also help as well.
I'd like to hear from Sabrina, if you would like to comment on this.
I don't love increasing interest revenue, even more dollars, but that if that's the will of the council, then that's what we'll do. That's all I have to say, really.
Stephen, do you have anything to add?
Well, we have a balanced budget. And I guess my view coming in on this is any changes we do make for increases, there should come with it a recommendation of where we're going to get it other than borrowing or what have you, or interest payments, I guess. It's like, where in the budget can we get this $21,000 in order to do this? Otherwise, I don't know that I can support it.
Yes, Amanda?
I was just going to speak to the investment income. So we did have a very successful year this year. So if you look at the investment income under revenues, we're sitting at about 413,000. Year to date, we have budgeted 250,000 for next year. Ultimately, though, I think we would need to find another funding source long term. We wouldn't want to rely on investment income, but we do likely have some wiggle room there, assuming that the market keeps up where it's at.
Has there been any thought as to where the money would come from? Other than what's been talked about already?
There hasn't been, to my knowledge, at least short term anyhow. I know I did reach out to our IT department, and existing equipment could be utilized for the additional staff person. So we would not have to buy any additional computers or telephones. So there would not be that added cost, again, for the equipment piece of it.
Do I hear a motion to approve this $20,000?
I'm still uneasy. I don't question the need. That's not the point, but we have to work within the resources we have available. I'm really very leery about doing investment income for several reasons. One of which is, this investment process where we've got, really gotten a good process going in the last year. It's just starting, and we need to build that before we start tapping into it. If we allow ourselves to build it, there'll be much more in the future that we can take and still grow the fund.
Alder Stevens.
If I can build off Stephen's point, right now rates are pretty high, and that's not something that we've had that we've dealt with since I've been on council. And that's great if you need an extra source of revenue. We've had to learn to do without, where our interest income was almost nothing. And I personally, I think I'm going to be expecting interest rates to stay where they are for at least the next few Fed hearings. So it's going to be at least 6 months. And I think they're going to stay at this level for a while, but at some point, they're probably not going to be this high, and they're going to go down. So what happens at that point? Are we looking at, if this is the funding source and that funding source goes away, are we looking then to do a termination then because we can't afford it? Or will something else be cut later? So if we're going to bring somebody on, I think we should have the capacity to keep them basically in perpetuity. And if we don't think that that's likely, I would be hesitant to go down that path unless there was an alternate funding source that we're aware of now.
Larry?
Amy, there's two proposals here. One is for 15 hours a week, one's for 10 hours a week. What are you looking at needing?
Again, this was an initiative that was submitted at 10 hours a week. And then on the other opposite side was 15 hours a week, just what that cost projection is. Again, this was something to help alleviate that workload in our office, to just assist with the various administrative duties that come along with the recruitment side of things. So again, this was what was proposed, but didn't it?
10 hours can be adequate?
It may or may not. Again, any little bit is going to help. I think that right now with recruitment, again, there is, it's hard to get the turnover in terms of getting that person on site as quickly as we'd like to, because we can't 100% focus to everyone recruitment. It also places greater burden on our department managers and supervisors as well, with some of the things that we aren't able to do. But again, we'll do the best that we can and keep plugging along as we can, but it may delay our recruitments. Again, with having double that effort with the same amount of staff, it is going to slow things down.
Get rid of the Politician Act. Which one do you want? 10 or the 15?
Well, if I had a choice, I would go for the 15.
All right,
And I had requested that Amy do the comparison of the 10 and the 15
I
hours.
may have lost you.
We just heard
We
you.
can hear you.
Haven't heard anyone talking in about the last 30 seconds.
Can you hear us now, Stephen?
Hello?
He left. I think he's going to attempt to rejoin the meeting.
You just said lost you calling back.
Can I ask a question while we're waiting? I don't know if I can or not. So what was your reasoning for 20,000 if 15 hours was the request? What was your reasoning for 20,000?
I just pulled a number just because, I mean, I don't know what the market conditions are.
And whether that
yeah.
that hourly rate would be sufficient? Is that,
I mean, I wouldn't be doing it for $12 an hour, quite frankly.
no, I was just curious where the 20,000 came from.
I just pulled a number. I just pulled a number because kind of like what we did for parks a couple years ago, or for the pool, because we didn't know. So it gave administration and Dan the opportunity, depending upon market conditions, to be able to flex as the market changed, especially when they were in competition for lifeguards. So, I mean, the number can certainly come down. I mean, I can certainly, between now and November here, and I can certainly find money. But I certainly don't like the race to the bottom. I think it's disrespectful, and we've done it before, and I don't like it, doing the race to the bottom. But if I have to find money, I will certainly find it.
I dropped out for about 2 minutes, so I've lost a lot of the conversation. Are we still discussing that position?
Yes, Sean was just going to,
Yeah, my thought at the moment is, my question that I have is with each, and being new to this, or with each time that we go through each of these tabs, are we making these decisions now, or should we wait till the end so that we know the total impact, or how does
Sabrina's keeping,
okay, so this is kind of on the go kind of thing. So if all of a sudden something happens where we get into a different position with things, then you would,
Yes.
okay,
Thank you.
that's what I want. That's all I'm wondering. Thank you.
Mayor.
I was just gonna make a couple notes. First of all, I think there were many really good initiatives that didn't get passed. This is just one of those. But alternatively, a lot of them did get passed. So let's not lose sight of that we've made, we've been able to do a lot of really important things that are going to be good for all of us. Because all of the departments need more support. And I think that Alder Wolf's position of saying a dollar amount rather than some specific things with the seasonal help, I think it really does help because it gives flexibility if they were going to go ahead with it. I think whether it's 10 or 20,000 and the interest income for this upcoming year is probably not going to be consequential. And if that was the thing that was giving council a little bit of unease, that it could be considered a 1 year only thing. We've done that before, that it would have to go back through council again if it was to continue. So that would give the HR department, with the transition of the new employee and other things going on, just a little chance to see if it's needed permanently or if it's just needed as a little boost to get through the changing times that it seems like that we're in. Alternatively, I don't think it would be a bad idea to put it on the back burner till later tonight when we see, because we don't want to do a whole bunch of these things, right? We're going to have, right now, we've got the 1% on the table, that additional 1% COLA in July, that everyone would like to be able to have that happen, potentially funded through the equipment replacement fund. Now we have this 10 or $20,000 potential thing. So we could just put it on the back burner as we did that additional COLA. But I'm just trying to streamline the discussion so we can keep moving.
I do support putting it on the back burner. I think that I also support that if Alder Wolf wanted to do her due diligence between now and the budget hearing to come up with where the money is actually going to be coming from, that would also be fine. Stephen, are you okay with putting it on the back burner?
Yeah, that would be preferential.
Okay, that's what we'll do then. The next tab is the assessor tab. Any questions on that? The one question I did have is, under other contractual services, it says contract base, 115,000. Would someone be able to explain what that is?
That's just our contracted cost for 2024 with the assessor.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then does our contract with the assessor we have now go through 2025?
It goes through 2024, correct? And then we'll be going out for RFP probably mid-year to cover us in 2025 and so forth.
Okay. Yes, Alder Stevens?
On line 290, there's like $44,000 left for the year with 2 months remaining. Do we have a lot of billing that's going to be coming out yet, or are we going to be well ahead there?
At the time of this, when this report was ran, which was on October 1st, we hadn't received our bill for October. So we still need to receive October, November, and December. So 3 months. My guess is we'll come awfully close to that 110.5.
So when you see 44,000
Yeah.
sitting there and there's a $20,000 or $10,000 proposal, easy to kind of connect the dots, but okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Stephen, any questions?
No.
Okay, going on to the next tab is IT. Welcome, Joe.
His first one.
I know it. I know it.
There's a few in the audience, it's their first budget. That's 1, 2, 3.
And this is not covering the copiers at all, right? Joe, this doesn't cover the
No.
copiers at all.
Nope, it doesn't.
Alder Stevens.
Under line 240, I noticed that year to date, we're at 65 and we're budgeted 63. So with, I guess, 3 months remaining, do we have enough for software maintenance, or is there a reason why we think that we'll be spending less next year?
So we've made some changes to some of the software that we're currently using, which has reduced the cost in certain areas. Is it going to be enough for next year? It'll be pretty close. I'm hoping to be making other changes that will bring down the cost of the software that we're using. We have a lot of like duplicate software programs that we pay for where we can consolidate and save money.
Great, thank you.
Joe, when you and I talked, I got the explanation from you on, the new replacement equipment, hardware, software, sinking fund and disaster recovery. Can you go
Yep.
into that a little bit?
So basically, we have a disaster recovery fund of about $15,000, and the sinking fund was 55,541, something like that. So what those funds are for is just those unexpected things that are gonna come up. If we have switches go down, if we have access points go down, something major with our phone system. It's kind of like an emergency fund for all that stuff. On the backside of that, we also need to make sure we have enough money set aside in the event of some kind of ransomware attack or any other kind of cyber attack. Because we will have to put money out of pocket to save us, so. Some of this too could be that we may have an opportunity where there's a new program or a new piece of hardware that we may need for the network to also help prevent that. So by having that money in there, we're protected against an unexpected expense.
Now or IT?
IT still.
Any further questions? Stephen?
Not for me.
Okay. We good to go? Okay, the next is City Hall. Oh, I'm sorry, Larry.
Yeah, this is the reason why I brought up my question earlier today about the phones. Each department has to pay so much for phones, and now you have the city hall paying budgeting $8,300 for phones.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, the internet bill for the entire city goes to the city hall
Okay.
budget.
All right. Thank you, Chair.
Alder Stevens?
On line 221, I know that utilities have gone up a lot in the last year, and it looks like we might be not budgeting. Like we'll be close, but it kind of would anticipate us blowing over the 55,000. Are we comfortable with that dollar amount?
We're doing our best. It's our best estimate to where we're gonna be at. I mean, if you look at 2022, we were at 64,000. So,
Right, but costs have, energy costs are higher now. I mean, we can
Right.
turn the lights off at night, but. And I know that you can work a lot of magic, but that still has some limits, but. I mean, if that's what you think we're gonna hit, then I'm good with that. I just think maybe we're gonna go over that and should budget appropriately.
I don't question that, Stevens, we're attempting to, and, doing our best with it. I think this is why you see, not jumping, but when you look at our capital improvement why we're anticipating trying to do some things to reduce that cost. Because this cost here is only 55% of the electric bill cost. Police and fire both have electric for the building in their budgets also.
I guess my suggestion would be to earmark that and if possible, maybe kick that up to 60,000, but. That would be for a voting member.
Again, I'll have the question of where does that money come from? We have a balanced budget right now. I can see, that there might be some room on for line 340 to take maybe 2K or something, but that's not 10K.
Yeah, ideally, I mean, we just hit the 55,000, but you know, I guess we could ask the question a year from now if we go over. I know they'll kind of do some budget adjustments, but there's a lot of places where we're being very conservative, and this is one where I think we're potentially not being conservative enough, but at the end of the day, I'm sure it'll be fine.
Amanda.
Yeah, we are at year-to-date 43,740,33 with a budgeted 50,000. So at least as of right now, I don't think we're trending towards that 64,000 that we saw in 2022. But there is some room within this budget. I mean, if you look at some of those we put aside for electrical, contractual, plumbing contractual, we haven't touched those in the entire time we show the history of the budget. And so there is some room, I think, to absorb that a little bit if we do go somewhat over.
I think if you also look back in the other years, 21 and 22, you know, where some of those numbers did increase, we still were able to maintain the entire budget, integrity of the budget that we had budgeted with it. So we do monitor this, and we do look at other areas that we have to probably limit spending because of the other line items potentially going over.
I guess where I'm going with this, if I were to just multiply this out, based off of the current year-to-date activity, if that has 3 months remaining, and there were no changes in energy consumption or price increases, then we should be at least 58.5, but maybe there's some cost savings and within departments, or turn the computers off over a long weekend, things like that.
I do like the cost savings method. I think that and both Dan and Amanda have spoken to the fact that that is also looked at, you know, different items that maybe could be used, some of those dollars. Any further discussions? Are we good to go? Okay. Okay, the next is police. Any questions, Stephen?
No.
Alder Wolf.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add that when I spoke with Chief Ashbeck on Friday afternoon, on the way out, I stopped by and spoke with Deb and Sue, who are longtime employees of the Onalaska Police Department. And we talked a little bit about the redacting of the videos and the work that's involved. And then they took me back to see Officer Danny and see what she was also doing. And it was a really good lesson to see what they're up against. So just want to thank staff for doing that. And I know they appreciated me stopping in also, but Chief and I will be following up about a couple of other things and probably also talking with legal about some issues that I don't know if it'll gain any traction, but just stay tuned. I'll let you know as I find out more. Thank you.
Larry?
Yeah, when I went on tour, Jared, for the city, he had mentioned that the fire department had the capabilities of changing lights when they're coming up to it. And I asked Chief, were you able to find out anything? If the police department can do that same thing or not?
I've not had a conversation yet with Chief Leddy, but yeah,
Okay.
it's on my list to talk to him about, yep.
Any further questions, thoughts, concerns?
Keeping on the same thread, I think we're going to be a little low on fuel, but
It's gonna be a warm winter.
No, for the vehicles.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I think we have more electric cars now, but
Alder Wolf?
Thank you again. And I just talked with Chief Ashbeck about the possibility of electric vehicles. So I look forward to some possible discussions in the future. Thank you.
That's one question, Chief, that I was wondering. I mean, are there enough charging stations in this area? Yeah, to, you know, and how do you feel about something like that?
I'm working with staff now on a feasibility study on installing chargers at City Hall here. So that's something that's we're currently researching. And so, yeah, we would invest in charging chargers here for our vehicles, so we wouldn't need to rely on outside chargers.
So this would be total electric and not the hybrid.
Correct.
Is that part of the 2024 budget? Because if not, that should be on an agenda item for another meeting.
Yeah, we're still in the research phase. That's not anything part of the 2024 budget.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, we'll go on to fire. Letty, when you and I talked, we had gone over the fact that the hydrants are now under fire. And they were a standalone before. And I don't know who could talk about that. But it says other contractual services. And because this had just gone under his budget, he wasn't aware.
Yeah, I can talk about that. Thanks to the Public Service Commission or the PSC, which we refer to periodically, we have to do a journal entry at the end of the year to record essentially the general fund pays the water utility for the use of the hydrants in the city. So that's really what that is. It's just an accounting journal entry of transferring dollars for the hydrant usage.
So the contractual part of it, that terminology.
That's just where we've always put it, is in other contractual services. That's just the account line that we use because it doesn't really, I mean, we could add an additional account, but it doesn't really have any other like specific account to use other than an expense account, and other contractual is just a normal
Okay.
account that is used. Jared seems like he has some insight on that as well.
Yeah, it's moving the money between the utility and the general fund. On a side note, the water utility is taxed. So the water utility actually pays taxes to the general fund on their assets that they have per the Public Service Commission. And oddly enough, that number in my multiple years here has been always within about $20,000. So the general fund does a journal entry back to the water utility for the hydrant rental, and then the water utility writes a journal entry back to the general fund for the taxes on their assets. So it kind of balances out at the end of the day.
It open runs.
Hey. Any other questions? Alder Wolf,
We're still on fire, correct?
you're on fire.
Thank you. Chief Letty, I apologize. I missed one question I had for you. Under new replacement equipment, page 4 of the, what I call the auxiliary documents that were not part of the budget book, but they were part of the attachments, the PDFs. There were 2 line items for combo gas with CO monitors. There were 2 line items for $269.50 each, but they were not fulfilled as far as like as part of the budget. Is there a reason why did you not want them, or was it just an oversight, or what?
I'm just jump in for them. Looking at their budget, looks like they're included in the line above it.
Oh, under the disposable seal. Oh, thank you. Okay. Oh, I got, it. Thank you.
Nice catch.
Thank you, Chair.
Stephen, any further questions from you?
No.
Everybody else okay? Okay, we'll go to inspection next. Anything, Stephen, on your,
No.
be okay to go? Okay, engineering is the next tab.
As a side note, you'll notice that the Board of Public Works information was put under engineering as it did for other departments.
Sorry, I couldn't understand it.
The Board of Public Works page was eliminated under engineering. Basically covers the expenses for the Board of Public Works meetings, the transcriptionist and the postage and public notices.
Any questions? The next tab is streets or street. Okay. Jared, when you and I talked, we, under the line item justification, there was a note under other contractual services, 105-3311. And at the end, it says if this operation is needed, funds will have to be used from snow and ice control designated reserve account. Can you go into a little bit about that?
That's what we outlined in the budget is, if we move snow, if we have enough snowfall, and we've only done this once in the last few years where if we run overnight snow operations where we clear snow from city streets, various locations around the city, we use contracted help for that. We actually use dumpster trucks to move snow. We don't have enough staff and our dump trucks are not big enough. The dumpster trucks can carry much more snow than our dump trucks can. So if we do have to do that operation, we would contract that out and we would either try and find the money in our budget at the end of the year, or we would have to go into the snow and ice reserve account. That's what I outline in that.
Do you know the dollar amount in that right now?
It's typically $2,500 a night, give or take, depending on how many trucks we have running the operation. We're hoping it doesn't snow that much.
As we all do.
And it's gonna snow tomorrow.
It did yesterday.
We didn't get any.
Worries.
Stephen, any questions or concerns?
No.
Okay. The next tab is street signs.
I have no questions.
Okay, to move on. Okay, the next is street lights.
Also, no questions from me.
No other questions? Okay, animal control.
And
Okay, we
again,
can-
no questions.
No,
Dan, is that a set contract? Okay.
We currently contract yearly with the Humane Society to provide animal control services. We did speak to them and did budget for a 3% increase in that contract amount. The contract will likely be coming through at the end of the year, probably at the December council.
so I'm sorry. Sometimes I can hear you and sometimes,
This reflects a 3% increase that we're anticipating for next year.
okay, thank you.
And they did approve a 3% increase and through discussions, we did ask if we could have a multi-year contract with them and they seemed okay with that as long as there was an increase. So I know we'll be working with them a little bit.
Okay, great. Okay, the next tab is the library. Oh, I'm sorry, Dan?
On item 225, I remember a ways back that the library was having problems with the phone system and they switched. The library, of course, is operated by the county library system. They switched to a voice over internet protocol. But then we were still paying for the phone system. So is this now just internet or are we duplicating the phone service?
When, when we were doing the phone system, and I know Brian's in room 112, so if he wants to step over to provide more detail, but some of our security systems needed to have hardwired lines. And so that's why we have to pay for some of the service. With the fire and security, they need the hard line. They can't go over the voice over IP stuff. So some of those lines we are still having to pay for on a monthly basis to maintain our security that we have at the facility.
Did we ever find out why the lines, like why? Because it seems, I understand your point, but if we're paying for a phone line that they can't use and then that forced them to go to VoIP. I mean, do we ever identify what the problem was? Because it seems like at least the county is having to waste money if we're already paying for that service. Why can't they just use ours? But, and I don't know if that's actually still a problem. I think the library folks just went to the voice over internet and because they needed a phone, but
Brian,
that might be something to look at.
but I think there's two separate things. One's the phone system and one's the copper line to run the fire alarm system and the security system. So we had the same thing at City Hall. We had the same thing at the Public Works facility. Joe has been working. As a matter of fact, we just got price increase today that they're working on trying to figure out from not CenturyTel, the Brightspeed. So it's kind of two different things that they can't run over the copper line. They're not going to run over that, but we have to have it for our security system. And since we own the building, we run the security system.
Alder Wolf.
Thank you, Chair. Dan Wick is under the new replacement equipment for the library, replace water fountain. Is that inside or outside? Outside.
Inside.
Thank you.
Going back to the new replacement equipment, the replacement of the gas fireplace. Can you go into detail a little bit more on that, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, the gas fireplace that's there at the library has not been functioning for the last few years. So our facilities manager has put it in our equipment replacement to be an item that we do replace in that at that location.
Does that emit heat at all, or is it just ambiance?
I'll let the resident expert address that.
Okay.
The unit that we're looking at actually does both. Now, how much heat it gives off, but it does give off heat. And I know that the patrons love it when it works. I had it working for about 3 weeks, and then we couldn't get this shut off again. So the unit we have there has been working and not working for the last 5 years. So that's why we decided now we need to update it. And that we got two different prices on the system when we were looking at it.
Alder Wolf.
Thank you, Chair. And if I remember correctly, I believe it was the Friends of the Library who originally purchased that in memory of Alicia Beckley, who was a longtime library director after she passed.
I believe that was part of the library when they did the library expansion. Yes.
Yeah, so thank you.
And not to jump ahead, but we'll get to the equipment replacement. All of the equipment replacement items will be addressed under one tab when we got to get to that section of the budget.
Any further questions? Okay, we'll go on to parks. Even anything?
No.
Okay. To go. Next tab is recreation. And Dan, when you and I talked, under seminars, conferences and travel,
Yes.
there was a WRPA convention spring
Yep.
workshop, and then it says switch to February. So
That-
are we looking at keeping that on the
Yeah,
budget?
we're going to do that. In the past, our conferences were always in October or early November. And now they've switched it to, that's a carryover from 2021 when they moved that conference now to a spring conference. That's just the language. Because typically this time of year, when we were going through some of these meetings, we haven't had our conference. So then there's a question why there's money may not be spent. So that's why I always label that. That's actually just wrong now. it should be taken off because it's been a few years that the conference has been in February.
Also, you and I talked about under revenues, the recreation fees and how that was going to switch how you were doing it for under 18 and over 18.
Yeah, there's just taxes that are paid on some of those programs and others that are not. So in the front, when we discussed revenues up on the revenue section, that's where all of our revenues for our Parks and Rec programs are allocated under the one of the first tabs that you did go through tonight.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll go on to the aquatics. Oh, go ahead, Stephen.
No, I thought you might have been waiting on me. I said no.
Okay. We'll go on to the aquatic center.
I have no questions.
Alder Stevens.
I'm just kind of curious, why are I'm pretty sure the aquatic center is closed for the season. But the wages were a little bit lower than what we would have anticipated, and we know that we had to, we were a little bit more proactive in paying lifeguards at least a wage where they would come work for us still compared to some other communities. Why is our budget down so much? Why is our activity down so much compared to the budget for 2023?
As
Good problem, but
the school district going back to school earlier, we closed the pool about 3 weeks earlier than we anticipated or would normally do it.
all right. There you have it.
Dan, with them changing the start date also, is that going to?
No, we've always opened the first Saturday in June. I don't see that changing because of staffing purposes, and we'll still probably close the same time, like that third week of August. Strictly because staffing becomes so difficult in August as high school athletics start up in early August and then the college kids go back to school. It's always a challenge for us to try to have enough staff. So our closing date is usually dependent on when we have staff and when they can work and how we can accommodate the public the best we can.
Alder Wolf.
Thank you, Chair. Plus, Dan, you also, was it Mondays and Friday nights?
Correct.
That you were not open this year.
Correct.
And you found that ended up being pretty successful and you're continue that into next year.
Correct. In the 2022 pool season, we really looked at what night swims were attended and which ones were not. Mondays and Fridays were by far the least attended. And so when we were struggling on staffing and trying to make things happen, we did reduce those nights of Monday and Friday this year. And we did not hear any complaints or any issues from the public that we were not open. So we look to continue that in the future.
Any other questions or concerns? Okay, the next is planning and zoning. And this, I'm sorry, Sabrina, go ahead.
I was just gonna note that this year with trying to condense some of these smaller budgets that were like one line, similar to the audit line, we did add this, add the economic development into planning and zoning, just kind of included it in there. That is our dues to the La Crosse County Planning Group, Commission, I think it's called LAPC. So that's why you see economic development under planning and zoning this year in that tab.
And Katie, is this something that we have, that we are obligated to be part of this group, or?
Sure. So this is a really good organization that the city belongs to. It offers a lot of grant opportunities for us. And it's a great way of showing regional cooperation throughout our area. So I would recommend that the city continue our membership and stay in this organization. Mayor, you sit on the LAPC?
Yep, I mean, I think it's really vitally important that we're a part of this group. I can't even imagine how we wouldn't be able to achieve the things we do without being a part of it.
Do you know how they come up with the dollar amount? I mean, it's kind of an odd dollar amount.
Based upon population.
Oh,
A lot of they're a metropolitan planning organization too, so a lot of their staff is federally funded through the MPO, gets funding from the federal government, so this is our local portion of it. They have to match a lot of that and stuff, so when you hear us talk about these STP urban grants, a lot of the transportation grants are funneled through this organization, and or regional transportation issues, as the mayor knows, because the mayor sits on this committee, and they usually meet once every couple months, and as was stated by others, it's a very good organization, and we get a lot of benefit out of it.
Right. So when you hear like that it was a 80% by the state and 20% by us, it's through this organization that money comes. And then they're always looking for other opportunities. That's why sometimes I'll hear of one, like if we had, like occasionally, if we had like idea for a capital improvement that we wanted to do and we had the plans ready to go, there are times where we would be able to get like 80% or more covered in a grant. But if we don't have it ready to go, sometimes we can't. So you have to be kind of looking ahead continually.
great. Thank you. Any other questions? Alder Wolf.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add that herein ends the general fund before we turn the page. Herein ends the general fund. So future, here on out, whatever, if there are any changes, it does not affect the general fund, the budget.
Amanda?
Could we take a brief recess before we move out of the general fund?
Okay, we were going to stop at 5:30 because the pizza was supposed to be here. I mean, if you want to take a quick 5-minute break, that'd be fine. Okay. Do that.
Alder Knott, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. The next tab is the park fund. Any questions? Are we ready to go? Okay. The next one is special projects and donations. Dan, under the general area, it says transfer out Omni 14,500. Could you elaborate on that?
Trying to,
I can.
The last, very last thing on the last page.
Dan, do you want me to?
yeah, well,
Okay.
So that is, I believe ordinance driven. That the special project fund would give quarterly, I think it's $3,625 of essentially the room tax revenue that's put into the special project goes to the Omni. And in 2020, I believe, or 2021, we increased that, because it was during COVID, but then it just reverted back to that 3,625 quarterly.
Okay. Yes, Larry?
Yeah, no, on donations, that money that we are giving out.
Nope, that is, those are monies that are received by the city. No money that is given to the city. That's why it's in the revenue section. Mhm. No, it's not guaranteed. So for example, this fund kind of houses different projects. For example, like the K-9 fundraiser. It also for Park and Rec, there we have some traveling teams and so forth, some like league teams. So then the money that comes in is the parents paying for their student to be part of that group. And then we have costs coming out. So that's why you see kind of revenues and expenses kind of matching up between the different programs. Woodman's is money that comes in to the city that's usually donated for the police department that may not necessarily have a specific purpose. Is that correct, Chief Ashbeck? Whereas like the K-9 is people like designate that this is for the K-9 program. I believe Woodman's is also used for the right around the Christmas time when they're giving out gifts and so forth. Is that correct, Chief? Not always. I think a lot of entities will just donate dollars to the city. I think Chief.
For that.
Chief Ashbeck?
Yeah, I just want to say that's correct. I mean, throughout the year, oftentimes we'll receive donations in different amounts and people just want to donate for whatever reason. And so, they say just find a good reason to put that money towards. And so it kind of is a general account for us to then reuse for Santa's List or National Night Out or other events that we'll pull from that pot of money. The K-9 push is what you said? Yes, that was a different pot of money, but yes, definitely that was a big push.
Alder Stevens.
To that point, actually, if we can talk about the canines. We have a line 48,524, which is kind of like the traditional canine unit GL that we've had. But then we have 48,530, which is a second one. So I guess, are we in the future, I assume that they're gonna try to budget and raise funds for 2 dogs once they're in place, and then is that gonna happen in 2024, do we think, or is that, I know there's quite a lead time before Rover will start patrolling the streets.
Yeah, we're shooting for 2024 for the second K-9 to be out on the road. And then we're going to be combining and going back down to 1 K-9 account and just fundraise. Our total fundraising efforts will go to support both dogs, both program, essentially that program, which will include 2 dogs. We won't be breaking it off into trying to fundraise for 1 and number 2 or anything like that.
And we're still raising money for those, right? This is an ongoing program?
Correct, yes.
But the majority of that money went for the vehicle, not for the animal, correct?
Correct. The majority of that fundraiser did have to go towards the purchase of the vehicle and then the equipment inside of it, yes.
Even any questions?
No.
Alder Wolf.
Thank you, Chair. Dan Wick, I apologize. I missed one to ask you about under parks. For the dog park, I see that we just have a increase to $5,700 for the dog park. Just wondering if, is there any reason for the anticipated increase that we don't know about? It ends in 798.
Yeah, so we've been having a lot of questions from our dog park users about adding some sort of a light. Because as we're getting into the winter months, we still have a lot of people utilizing it. And so our staff has put together got some estimates and things of adding some sort of a light fixture there to give the dog park some light. So that's the plan with the addition of that funds.
Okay, thank you.
Could we be budgeting, there's interest income in 2023. So we're not planning on anything in 2024. Would there be potential revenue coming in on 48-100?
That's a good question. And I think someone else questioned me that during my budget meetings. I just typically, in the past, we've never budgeted any dollars in that for interest income. The interest income really does just go, any money that we would receive goes to the reserve fund balance in this fund. I mean, we definitely can budget for it, but I guess it's not a necessity. So that's why I've never budgeted for it. It doesn't help the general fund or anything of that nature. So that's kind of why I've never budgeted for it. And we also, in this fund, we don't run at a deficit. We run at a surplus anyway, when we're budgeting. So that's kind of my reasoning why I haven't.
So, and just so I understand the source, does this come from it's like the funds that have been accumulated and are earning interest from all these line items?
The main dollars is actually for tourism dollars, because there's a large tourism special project account that has over $800,000 in it that we receive interest on. So then mainly it's coming from that account.
And then do those dollars go back into tourism as part of that budget? Or
Yeah, so
use it for
Yep.
other things?
at the end of the year, it would go to mainly to that tourism reserve balance in this fund. So it doesn't go to the tourism fund, but it goes to the tourism reserve balance in the special project fund.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Larry? It could. I think in the past, what we've used is actually the tourism reserve balance and the tourism fund. But it has been used out of this fund prior as well. There's also a reserve balance in the tourism fund itself that dollars can be used out of.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? Refuge and recycling is the next tab.
Refuse and recycle.
Refuge. The one question I would have, and I think I might have already talked to Jared about that, is the miscellaneous income. If we could kind of get a explanation of what that is.
Yeah, so the miscellaneous income is the new recycling fee that we've instituted on the utility bills. That's the reason that the general property taxes, the first line has went down accordingly.
Yes.
Is the price for the yardsticks going up?
Yes, it's going to $30.
Okay.
Even any questions?
No.
Fine. Okay, shared ride is the next tab. The question that I had for Sabrina was under 206-49400, sale of city property. You want to go through that explanation?
Sure. So that account is any revenue that we receive or dollars that we receive for selling our share ride vans. So when we replace them, we did replace 4 we replaced 5, but one of them was a vehicle that was in an accident. So we couldn't sell that one. We got insurance proceeds for that. But the other 4 vans were just recently sold. A couple were over $10,000. So that's great news. Haven't received the check yet for that. But I'm budgeting in 2024 that we would replace 2 to 3 vehicles in 2024, depending on what the state bid is for the cost of purchasing new vehicles, because we do have some grant dollars set aside with an 80-20 match. So that 15,000 is if we were to sell, 2 or 3 of those vehicles and then replace them, that's what that 15,000 is for. And it's probably very conservative.
Okay. I know that I was told that the pizza was supposed to be here by 5:30 and that we would break at that point. And I was just wondering, has it arrived? Okay. And I think we should take the break. Hopefully, I'm not sure, is 20 minutes sufficient or 30? What would you?
I think we're making pretty good time, but is a working lunch, dinner an option? I mean,
No.
I think we're on pace to get through this tonight, but we just had a break also.
15 minutes. Yeah.
20, do 20.
20 minutes?
It just-
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I think we'll break for 20 minutes then for the lunch. Equipment replacement.
Huh?
Sorry, we're on equipment replacement fund. Yes, Alder Wolf.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for our finance director. Regarding equipment replacement, how do you, I'm assuming you're the one who kind of regulates like where we're at, like with the department heads, like when things are purchased and such? Like, do you regulate this like throughout the year, the purchases and such, or like what is the relationship between department heads purchasing things through equipment replacement and finance? How does that work?
So when if someone were to be purchasing something, it would come through as a purchase order. And if it's under $5,000, it would get approved by myself. So typically what I have to do is, the purchase order comes through and then I have to, go find the account number and make sure that, there's budget dollars in that account. And then if it's over $5,000, it would go to the administrator. And typically I still do that process and we'll let them know that this was a budgeted expenditure. And then they would sign off on it. When it comes to the equipment replacement, typically those items, if they are budgeted for, then they would go through that process. If something isn't budgeted for example, in 2021, we came forward to the council and said we want to use some money from the equipment replacement to replace some election equipment. Otherwise, if it's something that wasn't budgeted for, it would come to the council. Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Sabrina, when you and I talked, my question was, it has a minimum of 5,000, but there didn't seem to be a maximum. And you and I had talked about possibly doing something as far as a purchasing policy where it needs to fall in between this and this.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. One thing that I was working with Amanda on and Jared as well, we were looking at our purchasing matrix, which is a spreadsheet that shows like, at what point do you need to go out for RFP? At what point do you need to get quotes and so forth? And that's something that will be brought forward at some point. I think we'll bring Rick into the conversation and talk about some of those changes and bring that forward, likely to F&P first and then to the council. But one thing that has been discussed is, at what point do we use equipment replacement dollars and at what point don't we? So like, for example, like Leanne said, typically an item that would be like a $5,000 or more item, we'd want to use this fund. But at what point is it, well, this is too much of an expense that we wouldn't use equipment replacement dollars? So that is definitely something that we'll continue just to discuss and bring forward. Leanne, if I could make one other point real quick. So originally I had put 107,388 in equipment replacement after funding some of the initiatives. I originally had $203,000, which makes me really happy. But putting 107,388 is kind of where we were at before the budget changes. After the changes that have been brought forth and already voted on tonight, we would be at 142,813 that we would be able to put in this fund, which right now we already would be at a deficit. Likely each year we are able to, in the past, have been able to do an operating transfer to help fund this equipment replacement fund in general. And that's where some of my concerns come when we increase revenues in the general fund budget, is that leaves me less dollars to be able to transfer at the end of the year, right? And if we continue to increase certain revenue line items, then if we don't meet those line items, that puts us in a bad place. And if, we do, but we don't go over, that leaves us less money to be able to handle a situation where an expense might go over or so forth. So I just wanted to give an update on the balance that we would put in there, that 142,813, and just kind of explain how the equipment replacement fund works for some of you that are newer to the council.
Stephen, did you have any concerns, comments?
I have no questions.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we will go on to joint municipal court. Alder Wolf.
Thank you. Amanda, I forgot to ask this question when we met. Who pays for sending the judge to judge school or whatever they call it?
I believe that would come out of the joint municipal court budget.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have no questions.
Is everybody else ready? Larry?
No, you had a question.
No, he said.
Oh.
I'm sorry, Stephen. You had no other
Oh,
question.
Yeah, I said no questions.
Okay, we can go on to the debt service.
Well, cops got get busy. They only fined 120,000 last year.
Larry Stevens?
Under debt service, I do think it's interesting, but I'm not sure what's happening. So there's interest income. Is that coming in off of the property taxes that we're waiting to make the debt payment? Or where's the interest income coming?
Great question. So the debt service fund, that interest income is coming from, essentially any, accounts that we have that we haven't used those dollars yet, for example. So we've bonded for those dollars, but we haven't used them yet because we're waiting for squad cars isn't a great example because we're not getting those and that's out of the ARPA fund. But other projects that may be in works but haven't actually happened yet. So there's dollars that are sitting in money market accounts and we're receiving interest.
And at the end of the year, what happens? To those dollars?
It's,
Placement or-
nope, those dollars stay in the debt service fund.
They eventually paid on the debt.
Correct. Yep.
Typically, what we find is the interest income projects take anywhere from 6 to 18 months usually to get bid out, constructed and making payments. So a lot of times that interest income will go back into, at the end of the, if you look, we have different years of debt of capital bonding, and at the end of the year, there'll usually be a fund balance of some kind. So we've saved enough other years on projects where we've been able to reroute it 2 or 3 years later into other projects to lower our amount of bonding. But we found in the last couple of years is that we're running, if anything, we've been having bids that come in over what we've been budgeting just with the price increases. So, but it all stays in the capital projects accounts. So if water borrows bonds for projects, it goes back into that same year's capital project account for water.
Okay, we're ready to move on. Okay, the next one is the TIF 5. Tax incremental financing.
Yep.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
That's a pay go.
Correct.
Okay, any questions?
My understanding is we're ahead on this one, right? Do we anticipate this will be paid off?
Well, we are only in the second year of making a payment. So I don't believe at this point we're ahead. Jared, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't have the exact number of years, but it's going to be multiple years. It's going to take it a long time. It's it was designed for 20 years, and I think it's not gonna. They knew what their values were going to be pretty set, so it came in about what they scheduled, so it's going to be pretty close to the time frame in the TIF plan.
Even any questions?
No.
Okay, we can go on to TIF 6. Sabrina.
Thank you. The only thing I wanted to add here is this is where one of those budget changes is, because I took the full value of the TIF instead of taking out the base value. So this is where one of those changes will be made, is in TIF 6. Yes, that is correct. So that will decrease, the tax increment.
Instead of 480,000, it'll be about half.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
One of the things I just point out is that we do have projects in the proposed capital improvement budget that we will be starting to utilize some of this TIF increment for projects in this area that were included in the TIF plan, such as installation of street lighting and starting the engineering design of a stormwater project for the next year. This increment is actually, when you look at the buildings out there, the assessment is a year behind. So we're actually getting more, it's progressing, the TIF is progressing fairly well and bringing in increments. So.
Okay, if everyone's okay, we can go on to water utilities. Utility. My question on all of the utilities when I sat down with Sabrina was we're running at deficits in all of them. So I was wondering if you could kind of explain the reasoning at this point.
Yeah, that's typically been what we've done in the past, which isn't a great answer. But the reason for running at the deficit is, for example, in regards to revenues, we do budget fairly conservative for our revenues for all 3 utilities. Secondly, one of the expenses for the utility is depreciation. So knowing that that is a large portion of the expense and a large portion of what we're budgeting as a deficit, is usually why we feel fairly comfortable with budgeting at a deficit. Would you agree, Jared, based on past?
Yep. I would agree. The depreciation number, just for instance, in the water utility is about $850,000. So as long as we are making the investment back in our infrastructure, that number is not a cash on hand number. So at the end of the day, we are bringing in cash to cover our finances and our bills and expenses in our utilities. And with that, such as the water utility, we're governed by the Public Service Commission. So our rates are really set based upon those assets, liabilities, the depreciation, the amount of assets that we have, the equipment we have. With that, it's going next week's Board of Public Works meeting. We did get approval for a Public Service Commission rate adjustment, simplified rate case. That'll be discussed at that meeting, but those are all things that are governed and set by the Public Service Commission. The water and sewer or the sewer utility is not governed by this, by the PSC, but you'll see coming up that it's kind of, as you stated, it's the same thing, but we have typically over the years been very conservative on revenues, and if you look every year, we typically come in quite higher on revenues, so I feel comfortable with the numbers that we have included in the budget.
Can I ask the question, please?
Yes, Stephen, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so, and I totally agree with the going conservative because, going optimistic and then coming up short would cause real issues with the budget. But, am I to assume that in 2023, we have more revenue still coming in?
That is correct. We've got a whole nother quarter of revenues coming in on the water and sewer and storm sewer. We've collected three quarters of our revenues. We have included the, actually in these numbers in your book, probably Sabrina, are we just one quarter?
We just have 1 quarter left.
So we'll have no problem exceeding our budgeted revenues again then. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we can go on to the next tab, which is sewer utility. Jared, when you and I talked, you had indicated that La Crosse was going to be increasing.
Yes, so for over the last 3 years, we've seen increased costs in the sewer utility for treatment rates for our treatment of our sanitary sewerage at the La Crosse treatment plant. Those were through an agreement, a new 20-year agreement that was signed a few years ago to cover the, and mainly those are for treatment plant costs they have had in the last few years. They have performed major upgrades at the treatment plant. They let $70 million of the contracts down there. The treatment plant was pretty outdated, really needed some upgrades, so they invested in it. As part of that, they had been holding off. They hadn't raised the rates for probably 8 years before that because they've been trying to hold them steady and they were kind of arbitrarily low. But now the rates have doubled since then with what we're paying. If you look at the statewide average, it's still below the average and below the average of what some of the others around municipalities around us are paying. But they are actually those rates were put together in 2021, and you know what has happened with costs over the last 2 years. So they are raising the wholesale rate to another 8.5% for 2024. If you look at our line item for La Crosse treatment plant charges, we did not raise that because we were bringing in enough revenue. We had used a percentage basis on our cost calculations, and we were actually had enough money to cover that. So we did not raise that line item. So if that kind of gives you the.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll be increasing the cost to the residents.
We did increase we have what's in a sewer utility, we have a flat charge that has stayed the same. We have a treatment charge, which is based upon the cost for La Crosse to treat our sewer. We have a transmission charge, which is actually the charge for the city cost to have your mains and street, your lift stations, and all your conveyance system to get it to the La Crosse sewer system. We did raise that 5% this year.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, let's go on to the cemetery. Any questions, Stephen?
Not for me.
No more questions. I think we can go on to the Omni Center.
Leanne, I do have a question on this one.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Sure. It's under revenues, going with the same thread that we usually go very conservative, just to make sure that we meet or exceed our budgeted goal on revenues. I see a substantial increase in projected revenues for 2024. We exceeded that projection in 2022. Well, I guess 2021 is a COVID year, so that's bizarre, but 23, we should exceed. But this is a fairly good bump up. What's our confidence level that this is going to still be a pretty conservative projection?
Stephen, what account number are you referencing?
I'm looking at the total all the way at the bottom of revenues.
Yep. I mean, we're very confident with the new business that we have coming in, some of the new activities that we have under contract going forward, that we're very confident that, and we feel these numbers are a conservative look as we look into 2024.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, Stephen, just to build off your point, there was marketing dollars going towards the Omni Center. Is that part of what's driving that? Increase?
Yes, some of the rebrand and just some of the activities that the staff up there have brought in and have contracts signed for in 2024.
Sorry, Stephen, didn't mean to interrupt.
Any further questions? Okay, we can go on to tourism. That is a question that I had when I talked to Dan, on page 3650-59200 transfers out, Omni per city ordinance, it's $105,000. I was wondering if we could get some clarification on that one.
That's just the transfer that per ordinance, the 1% that the Omni Center gets. That's based on the revenue projections that we got from Explore La Crosse. That number would be coming back to the Omni Center based on that.
Okay. Stephen, anything?
No.
Thank you, Chair. Either Dan or I think Dan, under the tourism auxiliary page 5 talks about the 5-year new replacement projection. It lists the very last item as camera system upgrade / replacement. The IC real-time camera system is already starting to fail. Is that in capital improvements for 2024?
We don't have it. It's not included in 2024. It's something that we are looking to. Did IT put it in? Did you, we don't, the group for landing? I'm going to try to find that document quick.
And this is for the skate park, correct?
Oh,
No.
We need to replace that system there also, yes.
Okay.
But,
It just says year to be purchased soon, and I just couldn't remember.
Yeah, we did not, that is not included in our, what we have.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
If-
okay, so,
If this is a security system, let's keep it very general, please.
Yes. Yeah.
so as
we
it
don't-
stands right now, it's not budgeted anywhere either in equipment replacement nor capital improvements.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we can go on to stormwater utility. Any other questions? Okay, if no other questions, then we can go on to the Gunderson Lutheran.
Not for me.
Pardon me? Pardon me, Stephen?
No question from me.
Okay.
No.
Thank you. We can go on to the Gunderson Lutheran parking ramp. Any questions at all on that one? Okay, the next is CDA management. I'm sorry, CDA, Community Development Authority.
No questions from me.
Blair Stevens?
I've talked to some members on the CDA, and something that's come up multiple times is under the subscriptions and dues is the largest expense to this category. And I believe that's kind of on Alaska's portion to the, I don't know, the greater economic, LADCO, that's it. So I'm just kind of passing along the conversations out there that the benefits of LADCO down Alaska. I know sometimes we'll have a meeting up here and stuff like that, but I feel those members would appreciate what are we getting for $7,700. That's probably, I'm not sure where I would bring that up. I'm not on that committee, but I'm not suggesting that we cut that. It's just, I think we need to do a better job on have LADCO justify to the CDA why they're paying $7,700 a year.
Katie, I thought the last time we had a meeting, wasn't that discussed? Didn't they, weren't you giving them information? Or
I do know the comments made by Elder Stevens were noted. However, it was felt that the event that they held in the city and also connections that LADCO has to incoming businesses that are looking to potentially locate in Unalaska is of greater benefit to the city. For example, today they just provided information related to regional development and business information for amounts of taxable value that was just brought into the community. So they do provide information and data gathering for the entire region, including Onalaska.
Mayor.
Yeah, and I think I'll just go on to say that the city doesn't really have resources specifically allocated to economic development. So I think it helps us bridge that gap with the community, with the business community a little bit. And also, I think it's important the relationships that we build with the other LADCO members are invaluable for working together for the economic benefit of this entire region.
Amanda.
I would just add too that LADCO is currently working very hard right now to address the airport and the loss of one of our major airline partners, which I think is a regional concern for all of us.
I'm not knocking the value of LADCO. I'm just suggesting that maybe somebody from LADCO could come and address the CDA and educate them on what it is that they're doing. But so right now we're talking budgets, so.
Alder Wolf.
Thank you, Chair. Amanda, I have a kind of annoying question that I keep thinking about. So when we talk about, for example, the CDA, so they're considered like a quasi committee, somewhat like
Joint Municipal Court.
and public transit.
Yes.
So and we've had this discussion about public transit, the partners who are at that table. The only thing that comes to, when it comes to public transit, any of the action that they take would only come to council for input, approval, whatever, is if they're actually asking for funds.
Correct. And it would be the same with the CDA. They're essentially a separate entity under the city, but not under the common council. However, if they need funding outside of what they already have, they do have some funding, some from projects that they have done. But if they needed additional funding, for example, if they wanted to buy land or do a development, they would need to come to council for council support and funding of that.
Okay, so I know Kim and I have been on this council for a long time, and LADCO comes up quite often. In fact, it probably comes up more than it doesn't. And there was such a time when we were members of LADCO for a number of years, and then we dropped off for, I don't know if it was 1 or 2 years, whatever it was, and then we came back on again. If CDA has the fund balance to appropriate the $7,700, can council really go ahead and take that funding line away from them if they do have the dollars in their fund balance?
Probably not, no.
Okay, that's I've always wondered that because, and as we continue down this road of quasi committees, I just didn't think so, but I know that they were defunded a few times in past years. As someone who has been on this council for a long time, I know I personally have forged relationships with LADCO. I understand the concern. I think that LADCO has, I agree with Mayor Kim wholeheartedly that it's about developing relationships. I believe all the other abutting municipalities are members of LADCO, and I would hate like heck for us to be the city of Onalaska, the second largest city in La Crosse County, to not also have an equal seat at that table. I think when we have asked LADCO to go ahead and have at least an event here in the city of Onalaska, they have come forth and done that. I just would like to continue, especially if we can't go ahead and defund it. I think that I don't think it's a bad idea to bring up, maybe if they were to come and maybe give a talk and tell us what's, you know, maybe it's a once a year thing where they come and talk about what they do, and not just come to CDA, but come to this council. You know, so we're all informed, so we all hear the same pitch. So, but I will continue to support LADCO at this time. Thank you.
Amanda.
I just wanted to add for the record too, because it is a quasi judicial entity, the CDA does approve its budget prior to it coming to council. So the CDA did approve the budget with this expense in it.
Yep.
Stephen, any comments?
No.
Okay.
Heck of a look.
Right. Yes, Mayor.
I'd like to ask that we go back and revisit the possible addition of a 1% July increase to the COLA.
Are we gonna do, we decided we were gonna do one motion for all seven, correct?
Yep, so those.
That was done.
Yep, those 7 have been approved. And then this would be anything additional to that.
So can I speak?
Absolutely.
So my understanding, if I'm from my notes, is we have 2 options out there that we can discuss. One is additional funds for HR for a temporary or part-time position. And the other one is for a 1% additional increase onto the July COLA. And the way I'm looking at it is we really have an either or situation here. Well, there's an option 3, of course, is do none of the above and maximize the equipment replacement fund addition. But I don't think we can do both. And in my view, it's the same thing with capital improvement fund. My very number one priority, and when in my own mind when I organize things, is that first take care of what we already have, and in this case, the what is more of a who. And we have not kept up with inflation with our folks. I know last year the federal government's COLA increase was 8.7, and this year is projected to be a 3.2. This at least would get us a good chunk toward us that if we can go with a 2 and a 4 to help make up for some of last year's loss with falling behind inflation. So, I mean, I'm not going to make a motion yet, but that's kind of where I'm going to start with discussion, is I really think that we probably need to go with the additional 1% on this.
Amanda.
I had a chance to briefly speak to Sabrina, and I do have an option 3 if the council would like to hear it.
Yes, please go ahead.
So as you noted, when you were going through the budget, you do have just a little bit of extra funding in the council budget. And so we could take $1,000 from, give me just a minute. From the transcription services, as well as,
Amanda, you could take that 750 from that chamber thing too, from the mayor's budget.
Amanda, you can search too in that file.
Okay.
You hit Control F, you can search.
okay, so here is Fund 291 transcription contractual. You have been generally under budget the last couple of years by a couple of thousand. I think it would be safe to take 1,000 out of Fund 291. That's 100-511-00-291, as well as Fund 100-511-00-322 legal notices. You have also generally been under budget the last couple of years. I think it would be safe to take $1,000 and bring that down to 4,500. So that gets you to 2,000. Then I think that we could give me 1 minute. Look at The fire department's Fund 100-52200124 permanent part-time wages. Currently, they have $73,400 budgeted. If you look at their last several years, they have not come close to that. I know the chief would like to expand his training and have his part-time people come in more, so I would not suggest taking a lot out of this, but I do think that if we took about $15,000 from that budget, we would be safe. We would give them plenty of room to increase their wages from where they're at this year, while putting $17,000 in total towards a human resource assistant.
Man, how much is in that account that you were gonna take the 15,000 from?
73,400. And if you look at it last year or this year to date is at 24,700. In 2022, they had 42,000 in wages, and in 2021, they had 48,000 in wages. So we would still be keeping them at about 58,000, which is a significant 10,000 more than the highest they've spent over the last 4 years.
Can I ask what Chief has to say about that? I'd like to know if there's an unintended consequence we don't see.
So the part-time program is something I'm currently working on. I know that number for 23 is really low. I don't know that we had a solid plan in place. We just had a meeting last Monday. And we did set some minimum requirements for our part-time people. That's going to be implemented as of 1/1 of 24. I don't have enough knowledge to know if we're going to eat up that whole $73,400 or not. But we did implement some changes to have our part-time people more active.
So Chief, do you think that 58.4 would be enough or not?
I honestly don't have the knowledge at this point, Mr. Knott, that I can say that that would be enough or not.
Kim?
Yeah, let me just step in a little bit on this one. So, well, I want the part-time wages to be that high. I think that right now they're a little on the low end for part-time employees that are actively responding consistently. And it's going to take a while to build that program. So I think that we probably can bridge that gap for next year. But then look for, that program being very successful and us asking to be back restored to the 74,000 for the following year.
Alders Stevens.
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little confused as to, like, earlier we were talking about, I was looking at freeing up dollars on individual GLs and it was kind of poo-pooed, and at least by a couple alders, and the term race to the bottom was used. I was looking for options so we could fill some of these needs, and now we're doing exactly that. So, well, I don't understand why it was not okay then, but it is now. I'm not against this. I just, like, what changed?
This was a fund out of the fire department that Sabrina had previously questioned as far as whether or not we needed this amount in there. And so if there was a place where we felt like we had extra money, it was in this account. And again, to the chief's credit, I think he doesn't know what he doesn't know. And so he wasn't able to really answer, but asked to keep the money in there. We respected that. But I think to the mayor's point, we're struggling with that program, and the likelihood of using that full amount next year is not high. So I wouldn't recommend going budget by budget and, do that sort of race to the bottom. But this is the one area that has stood out to Sabrina and I as an area where we did have some extra.
All right. I mean, I think we could take another cursory view through this and find at least $10,000 and overused or funds that are kind of over budgeted. And we could fill that hole if we needed to, but like the message was earlier to not do that. So like, if we need the help in that department, then we need the help. And, you know, maybe 20,000 is not the magic number. Maybe we can compromise at 10 or 12 or something like that. And then I do like the idea of sunsetting it, but especially if it was coming off of other funds, but I'm willing to do that if that's a need here for the city. I mean, that's part of our job is we got to make sure that our people have the resources to do what they need to do. I think it's in the budget and I think we could find it, but we have to be willing to do that. But circling back, I mean, to me, the priority is, you know, the needs of everybody. And I think we've got catch up work to do on COLA. So if it did become an either or when this got to council, you know, I would, my preference is the increased COLA if we can't do both, but I think we can find a way if we put our minds to it.
Just let me just make sure that I'm understanding the $17,000 that came up. This is to cover HR's
Yes.
person and not the COLA. We're not talking about the COLA right now.
The COLA would be funded out of the equipment replacement. So that's you could do both. You could take the extra 21,000 from the equipment replacement to fund the extra 1% in the COLA, but you could move the 17,000 from these two accounts if you wanted to fund HR.
Sabrina?
Amanda is right. I did speak to Chief Floody shortly after he arrived regarding that account line for permanent part-time. And he gave the same answer he gave today. That's a program he wants to grow. What I can tell you from prior history is that typically they do budget around that 70,000 each year. And what we've done is, you know, they haven't had, you know, enough permanent part-time and haven't like had a good program. So we've used dollars that have been budgeted in there. And at the end of the year, we move them up to overtime because due to the fact that they can't get enough part-time people here, usually we pay more in overtime to our staff that are here. So that's what we've done in the past. So that's why you see, like, for example, if you look at 2021, the budget says 49, but likely we budgeted around 73,000 in that line, but we moved it into overtime because overtime went over. So that has kind of been a little bit of a buffer in the past, to kind of help with some of those overtime costs. The contract we have with the city of the town of Onalaska has helped a little bit with alleviating some of the overtime costs because they will be giving us some dollars for overtime costs. So that has helped a little bit in regards to general fund revenues. But I just wanted to comment on in the past, like it looks like the budget has been lower, but likely each year it's been right at that 73,000 and we've moved it into overtime because we've gone over. So at the end of the year, when I do all those budget adjustments in February, we move dollars around at that time.
Yeah, and Sabrina has an excellent point. That's why we want to build up the part-time staff so that we can reduce the overtime for the full-time people who are already working full-time. Can you revisit what the number was for that possible 1% COLA in July?
So in total for the general fund, in the budget change that I made, it was around 11,000. But that was because one line item was over budgeted. So it was around like 14,000 in total before that budget line. I'd have to run the numbers fully, but I think Amanda's probably pretty close. And that it would be approximately $20,000 to increase the COLA. Likely I would take that, like I said before, we are adding additional dollars right now to equipment replacement, to where equipment replacement would be, I misspoke before, I said 143, it'd actually be 137. 414 to be exact. So we would take, instead of putting that 137,000, would be like 117 to equipment replacement, which again puts us in a good spot to kind of cover that increase in the COLA and health insurance to kind of start out 2024 or 2025's budget process.
If I were to make a motion here shortly that also gave a nod towards Chief a little bit, that we trust that he's going to start moving towards the goal he wants, would 15,000 instead of 17,000 make a difference for HR? I.e.
She is
leaving
shaking her
Chief
head
with
yes.
just over 60,000. She's saying yes?
Yes, she is.
Okay, well then, I'm gonna make a motion. Let's get ready to take notes, because I'm gonna be referring to line numbers based upon what Amanda just brought out. So that, the motion is that we use the additional funds, 21,969 in the general fund, to offset a additional 1% increase in COLA, total 4% in July. And that we take $1,000 from line 100-51100-291 transcription contractual, and $1,000 from 100-51100-322 legal notices, and $13,000 from line number 100-52200-124 wages permanent part-time, and use those $15,000 to fund a additional work, I guess would be part-time or temporary based upon the needs of HR. But that will sunset at the end of the fiscal year 2024.
I second it. I'm just letting Joanne catch up here.
Need a computer.
Okay. Yes, Alderwolf.
Thank you, Chair. So Sabrina, could you repeat again? So to go from 2.2 to 2.3, which was approved earlier at the onset of tonight's meeting. I know on the line item on page 2 of the handout, you have a line item 10,759, but did I just hear you say something about that? It's closer to like 14,000 or something?
Yeah, that's correct. So if you look at page 1 of the proposed budget changes, and you look at account 100-51411-151 retirement WRS, that was a miscalculation. I'd included part-time and my seasonal staff and was somehow calculated WRS. That's why a new ERP system will be welcomed. So that calculated some WRS to my seasonal staff, which we would never pay WRS for that. So I had over budgeted in that line, which helped decrease the total of the 1%.
So it's the 10,759 plus the 3756.
Correct.
Okay, and then, and if you go to the from the currently approved 2.3 to 2.4, what is that additional amount going to be?
That was just brought to me tonight, so I have not had time to calculate those numbers.
But Amanda, did you said
About
circa
20,000.
20,000? Okay, and so the first. So when it comes to the interest income for the, to go from 2.2 to 2.3, is it just the 10,759 that is coming from interest income?
Correct.
Okay, and then where is this additional circa $20,000 coming from?
Instead of adding $20,000 to the equipment replacement fund to property taxes, as we did in budget adjustment 2.
So
That
we
was part
moved,
of Stephen's
one
motion.
of the changes,
what?
one of the changes we made was to add even more funds to equipment replacement. That was the second budget change.
Okay,
And so we would not add an additional 20,000 to equipment replacement,
okay,
and that would go towards the additional 1%.
okay.
And I'll have exact dollars figures at the budget hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Just looking for Sabrina's opinion as our financial guru. If we do this path on both, are we being financially prudent? I feel like we're stretching maybe a little further than we ought to, but if I hear it from you, I'll feel much better.
You're putting me in a bad spot. I would prefer to do just one, but I will do what the council tells me to do. Yep.
Sabrina, with my motion as is though, doesn't it end up being budget neutral? We're still balanced?
Yep.
It does, but it's kind of coming at the expense of the growth in the fire department.
Correct.
Has me a little nervous, but
Well, it comes at the expense of less growth in the fire department. There's still a doubling of nearly of what they had in that account, in that line number.
Right, but we, you know, never mind. I'm gonna be a politician. Just stop.
no, we've.
If there's real serious concerns about this, I can amend it.
People to this process, Sabrina, so.
My only opinion is we have a new fire chief who hasn't had the opportunity to see what he needs in that department. And in the past, my 2 years being here, that department has asked for additional support for their admin position, and we've turned it down multiple times. So it's just, I don't know, hits me a little harder, I guess.
I throw out maybe an alternative then. Halfway through the year, maybe we can do a budget adjustment if the growth in the fire department on the part-time is not where. If we have the funds available. Maybe we can make some changes later, and that way we're not stretching ourselves further now, but if the opportunity is something that we can take advantage of. I know it's not probably what HR wants to hear for the next 6 months or the first 6 months, but it might.
Dan, my understanding is the HR need is,
We can still do what we're looking to do.
Go ahead, Stephen.
yeah, Dan, my understanding is the HR need is immediate though. It's not later, it's now. Is that not correct?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah, but HR originally only wanted 10. We're giving them what, 15 now?
15, yeah.
The range was 10 to 15.
I think the thought process behind that was a difficulty in maybe finding somebody at the $12 per hour rate at part-time. That might be a difficult proposition. So there was some flexibility built in order to, if we got someone who's willing to do 13 or 14, that might work.
Okay, as parliamentarian, please use your hands and wait to be acknowledged by the chair. The mayor has had her hand up for at least 4 speakers now and has been cut off repeatedly. And so please let our FMP Chair Leanne acknowledge you.
Yeah, thank you. I was just gonna say when it comes to the fire department overtime, what number, when it comes to overtime now, the number that's in this budget is irrelevant. They're gonna use however much overtime they need to meet the requirements that they have to meet. So that isn't, really at stake here. We're gonna pay for it one way or another, whatever it ends up costing.
Chief Letty?
If I may, just to kind of piggyback off what the mayor was talking about earlier. So the plan to build this part-time program out is not going to happen overnight. We have to bring on several people. We're going to have to hire people. We have to get this program implemented. We have to have people that want to come in on part-time because obviously part-time is part-time. With that being said, moving forward, if we was it number $13,000? Is that what I heard? If what we kind of have planned comes to fruition and that number goes above 60 next year, I'd hope we could look at that for 25 then at that point. I guess that's what I wanted to say. If that makes
you.
sense.
Any other discussion? Are we good leaving the amendment, or excuse me, the motion as is? Stephen?
Yeah, I think I'll leave it as is for now. I mean, we can always revisit it at common council.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Thank you, Stephen, for putting that motion together. We're okay to go on to item number 5. Resolution 30-2.
No, we did those at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, we did that at the beginning.
I know, but you didn't accept the whole, you worded that right?
No.
The motion was to accept the changes, but you never did a motion to accept.
And move it to the public hearing. So we do need a motion now.
Okay, I have that written down. Okay.
That's fine.
Motion to advance the 2024 executive budget to common council budget hearing on Monday, November 13th, 2023.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Now, number 5, resolution 30-2023, a resolution to increase salaries for the common council and mayor. Sabrina, does that go to you or?
I can take this.
Okay.
This is a resolution that we have to pass yearly to adjust the salaries. We do have it set by ordinance. That we adjust the salaries at the start of each new term, based on the last term's COLAs. In order to have it properly noticed to the public, though, we do need to do a resolution each year, just letting the public know that we are adjusting the salaries. And so this is that notice. And so we do need to pass these.
So a resolution does not need a motion, correct?
Needs a motion, but not a roll call.
Okay, I make a motion to accept the resolution 30-2023.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say, oh, I'm sorry.
Discussion.
A quick question of Amanda. And the reason why we're doing this now is because we went the COLA route.
What? Yes. Yep. We tied it to the past COLAs. Yep.
We have to do this every single year.
Yes.
Right, miserably. Thank you, Chair.
Any further questions? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Resolution has been accepted. Yes, we should be. I mean, Sabrina, would we be able to cancel the meeting on the first?
Yes.
Okay, so what do we have to do that? Okay, we will be canceling the November 1st meeting, second meeting of the Finance and Personnel Committee special budget meeting.
Yay.
Okay, item number 6, adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second that. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 We are adjourned at 7:02 PM. Thank you very much.